Here. Here.
Here.
So we start with communications. Carla, could you read the first item, please? Oh, we do. Do we have a oh, I didn't know we had a. Okay, sorry. Oh, whoops. The mayor's right here here just in time with the proclamation.
Because I don't know, we have the proclamation.
Proclamation?
The pre-gavel proclamation, Arbor Day.
I thought you had it.
Oh, yeah.
Give us a moment for procedure here, folks. I'll make sure that Rachel brings it down and we return to it after communications. How about that? Want to do that?
Yeah.
Will that work? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Novick, for getting us started. Excuse my delay, folks. We have a delegation from Okayama, Japan visiting us this morning, so had to welcome them here to Portland. So let's move to communications items, 346. Oh. Mr. Thrasher, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having myself, Ken Thrasher, here this morning, along with my friend Ashley Ehlers, who is a College Possible coach in the Gresham School and high school, and also was previously a student of College Possible. So you get the benefit of a twofer here. She's done both been a student and been now a coach of students. We want to talk to you about College Possible today and consideration of having College Possible part of the city's budget for $500,000 next year. And we think it's a wonderful way to invest in strategic programs that really make a difference in the college transition years between high school and four-year colleges. This program is geared toward having low-income students graduate from a four-year college. And I got to tell you, of the research we've done in looking at what we could bring to East County to really improve college graduation rates for low-income students, College Possible was by far the most successful program we looked at nationally, and is evidence-based by a Harvard study that looked at it as the top program of its type in the nation, both from a cost per student and the outcomes. And let me tell you what those look like. In College Possible, nationally, the program picks up these low-income students in the junior and senior year, puts them through an intensive 2 hours twice a week after school with an AmeriCorps coach. They then get up to 6 years of coaching while they're in a four-year college, and allows us to show that these low-income students will graduate from college at a 60% graduation rate, which is the same rate as the average student body nationally. So if you think about it and you look at a peer group of low-income students that don't go through a program as intensive like this, what you'll find is the outcome from college graduation is a 10-to-1 ratio versus peers that do not go through the same program. We started this program a year ago in Portland. We have been in a number of the schools out in East County, David Douglas, Park Rose, Gresham, Barlow, and Reynolds. We are going to expand into the Portland Public Schools this next year with Madison, and Centennial will be coming on the following year. And we really believe a public partnership where we privately funded this to date would really increase the capacity both in having more schools in the Portland area served, but also going deeper in the schools that we're in to serve more students. We currently have 300 students directly in the program. Our students, the junior year, increased their college ACT scores an average of 23%, which was the highest increase in the history of College Possible nationally. And so what we've done is we've built a very powerful program with 300 students served now. We want to increase that to over 1,000 students in the next 5 years. I've given you a little summary chart that shows the demographics and the impact that we're having out in East County. And as you notice, we have 63% students of color, color, 86% of our students are first generation, and I said these low-income students are really doing a great job. And I want to just tell you a really quick story. One of our students named Jocelyn David Douglas is a senior this year and was the first student to ever get a full ride to Harvard. This was a young man that was not going to college. So we believe this request will allow us to really leverage the program, grow it faster, and with your support, I think we can really change the curve, reduce the cycle of poverty for these low-income students in East County, better prepare the workforce for the future, and one really important thing is we reduce our social costs in this state significantly by this kind of an investment. So with that, I would open it up for questions. And Ashley, I brought, because I thought you might want to talk to a student, because we only have 3 minutes, I thought I would do the formal, and if you have some questions, we'd love to answer them.
I have a question.
Yes.
My daughter's graduated from college in May, but 4 years ago, we went through all of the trials and tribulations of applying for college. And I remember that the financial aid maze was very hard to figure out. I remember that the application process was very complicated. I remember that the essays were very demanding, and it turned out that the parents were the least likely helpful people in that process because my daughter did not want to share her personal reflections. There was some career coaching stuff about, why go to college, what do you want to accomplish that was needed. There were the test scores and sometimes coaching and how to take tests and encouraging people to take them again. And then there was all the hand-holding throughout, and it was sort of overwhelming, actually. And so I'm just curious, of all those things and the other kinds of considerations, what do you find is the area of so to our coach, what are the areas where you find the greatest need in help?
It's a great question. I think, surprisingly, all of those things, I know it seems like I shouldn't say all of them, but for my students, their parents might not speak English, so they have no ability to have their parents edit their essays. So, I come every day and edit each of their essays multiple times before they send it in. Also the fact that they don't know the process of applying, so they don't even know that you have to fill out a FAFSA. A lot of students, low-income students, will go to FAFSA.com instead of FAFSA.gov and pay an extra $75 to file their free application for student aid. So I think those types of things, walking them through that whole process of applying to each school is really important.
With the FAFSA process, we required a computer and access to the internet. Unfortunately, it's not structured so that it tells you don't apply at the front end. So I put my marriage at risk for the weeks we spent doing it, only to find out at the back end that we were out of luck. And I kind of wish it had been a little more user-friendly.
Yeah, yep.
Well, we also have 7 partner colleges already in Oregon, so we are partnering with colleges to get access to those and break some of those barriers down. In addition, a couple other things I think are really important. We have a community service component to the program, and we also have a financial literacy component. So we it's not just academic, it works on all of the skills that these students need to be successful in life.
I also think students, they might not even consider college as an option for them, and I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned is that students come into the program saying, I never thought that I would be able to go to college. Nobody ever told me that I would go to college. So it sounds like your daughter grew up assuming that she was going to go to school, but for some of these kids, this is the first time anyone has ever told them that it's a possibility for them, so it really opens the doors for all the opportunities that they have available for them after high school.
My daughter's mother, my wife, is the first woman on her mother's side of the family to go to high school. So, I love the data on first-generation college students. Because that's the charm here, is creating a pattern of expectations for kids that maybe didn't have someone at home that had that opportunity.
I'm just curious, how does the initial contact work? Who, calls or visits a student to say, we hope you can interest you in this program?
Yeah, so we go into classrooms with sophomores and we give them what's called a college prep talk. So we tell them not only for recruitment purposes, but telling them what it takes to get into college, that you can't get D's in your classes, that colleges only accept C's or better. So those kind of things, making sure that they understand the financial aid process, applying for the FAFSA, all of that. And so at the end of that talk, we tell students, if you're interested in a program that would help you through this whole process, we are available to help. And so we start doing that their sophomore year, but hopefully the longer that you're in schools, the students know about the program beforehand. We walk around with our shirts on all the time, finding students during lunch, making sure that they're coming to session, that kind of stuff.
Thank you. It sounds like a great program. Mr. Thrasher, as you know, the city funds the Future Connect Scholarship Program with a partnership with Portland Community College. And we started that and was expecting a 2-to-1 private fundraising match for the city's investment. I think it's now almost 4-to-1 that the PCC Foundation is being able to get additional donations. Is there a component in your request to the city? Is there an expectation that there'll be a private match?
Yes, absolutely. We are increasing our fundraising at a really significant clip. And we started out primarily with foundations to launch the program, because you have to go for some dollars that can significantly scale you quickly. And following doing that, we have an individual campaign we're going to be launching. We think there are a lot of individual donors that like to give scholarships, for example, to a low-income student, first-generation students, and diverse students. And that, with programs like we have Equal Access at Portland State University, which I actually helped involved in starting as a scholarship program, we are going to start to connect those donors in a strategic way that I think will allow us to have very similar ratios of funding that you're talking about. We absolutely are going to match and exceed the amount of funds you would invest here.
Charlie, what's the elementary school we visited that has the banners of all the colleges along the corridor? So they're from the earliest possible
Park
days.
Rose. Yeah.
Park Rose. So
yeah.
the message from the beginning days of elementary school is
Park Rose, yeah.
you're going to go to college, and
Right.
we're gonna start educating you about college options.
Yes, it's high expectations is what we're setting for these students that have many of them never had high expectations. If you had talked to Don Grotting and you walked into David Douglas today, he will tell you that College Possible has changed the culture of going to college in David Douglas High School. More kids are now thinking about it because they see their peers being successful who never thought they could go.
Great. Other questions?
So I guess then the question would be, why are the school districts not funding it?
Well, interestingly, we are the only College Possible site nationally of their 5 other sites that have school funding. The schools actually do put an investment in this program. We asked them to do that. We have asked them to do that in the second year as a follow-on to the first year funding, and we're now going back and asking schools to continue to do that funding. So they have given a contribution toward the program. We believe that investment is important to commit the school and the staff toward the program. But we work very well with them on that, and Don and the other superintendents have been great in supporting that.
So could you please send us the breakdown of the funding for the program?
We can do that.
And I apologize, I missed, where are you a coach again?
I'm a coach at Gresham High School.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Great presentation.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Okay. While we're on the subject of education, number 347, and maybe 348 together.
347, request of Gary Withers to address council regarding 3 to PhD, and 348, request of Carl Talton to address council regarding 3 to PhD.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Morning. Always a pleasure to follow Ken Thrasher. We want to start with a big thank you, and really the thank you is from Ken and myself and others who are affiliated with the Children's Institute for the support that you've given to David Douglas School District and the wonderful initiative at the Earl Boyles School. And in fact, that's a great starting point for a conversation about 3 to PhD. And 3 to PhD is both a capital program and it's also an initiative with many, many program elements related to social services and education. The best way to view it is really through an equity lens. It's an Eastside, Northeast Portland educational initiative that strikes at the heart of closing the opportunity gap and creating this culture of college, and really beyond creating the culture of college, it's creating the culture of possibility. What's possible after you graduate from high school, whether it's college or onto a trade school or some other vocation. And so we have to look at the demographics of Fabian School, the largest catchment area in Portland Public Schools. And today there are 520 students at Fabian. There will be 800 when the new Fabian Concordia campus is built and open in September of 2017. Among those 500 students, in fact, the sheet that you have is now incorrect. It says that 81% are eligible for free and reduced lunch. The actual number, Portland Public Schools tells us, is 91%. And in fact, the principal and assistant principal estimate that about 20% of those students are technically homeless, and about another 25% live in trailer parks or in public housing. The diversity is rich. A third African American, Black, a third Latino, and a third everyone else, including about 20% for whom English is a second language. Now, there are 4 corners to the 3 to PhD initiative. We start with wraparound services, services that will provide mental, physical, dental, and nutrition services. We have wonderful partners there. The Tooth Taxi is just getting on board with us. Whole Foods and Pacific Foods are going to help us open an actual food club, making high nutrition, organic foods available at cost, about a third of what we pay for Pacific Foods at Fred Meyer, at the food club right there in the school itself. Now, from the wraparound services, we move to early childhood. We are all very much aware of the tremendous returns on investment for the social, emotional, and psychological development of young children and preparing them to learn through an intense early childhood program. And this program will have slots for 120 students. From there, we move to STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Carl Talton, civic leader, Concordia board member, will talk about the STEAM initiative here in just a minute. Then the fourth corner is unlike any corner of a program like this in the country. The Concordia University College of Education will be fully embedded within this new facility. So we will have the largest college of ed in the state serving students at this facility. We're here today to request $500,000 in your support for the capital initiative. We're grateful for the $100,000 that has been passed so far. I appreciate that very, very much. And I'll pass it to Carl with the notion that this is a scalable model for Portland, for the city, for the country, and that your support most likely will be matched in its entirety. Carl?
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Hales and City Council members. My name is Carl Talton. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees for Concordia University and an active participant in the rollout of the 3 to PhD program. I'm also part of the leadership of a coalition of community-based educational service providers who work primarily with communities of color. Some of these community-based organizations are only a few years old, but most have been around for a good 40 or 50 years, giving them tremendous history and credibility with the communities of inner North and Northeast Portland. The coalition was formed to ensure that children of color, and in particular, Black children, are not farther educationally distanced from not only their white counterparts, but from future economic opportunities made possible by a strong STEAM program. The goal of this STEAM Coalition of Color is to ensure that these community-based organizations have the necessary resources at their disposal to deliver and prepare STEAM-related curriculum to communities of color. To that end, we, that is the coalition, have formed a close working relationship with Concordia University and its 3 to PhD program. This relationship greatly increases the coalition's capacity to deliver STEAM-related curriculum, expertise, resources, and program to its respective communities. Along with this, community-based partners who have similar goals and long-standing relationships with these communities, this relationship will serve Concordia, the coalition, and most importantly, the community itself. Thank you. We appreciate the time. If you have questions, Gary and I are available to answer.
Gary, I have a question. If you're successful in this model of bringing a distinguished institution of higher learning into the public school system and creating a campus that is mutually reinforcing, is it replicable with other institutions in the city?
Absolutely. In fact, as we speak, I know Portland Public Schools is considering the next site for replication. We've already had folks from as far away as India visit Fabian, and I've had a number of inquiries recently from architects after I had a chance to speak at a public forum at Portland State, architects involved with school initiatives.
I have just a related, it's not so much a question, it's just something for you to ponder and for us as well. You know, we have a system of community centers in the city. We have partnerships with schools and school districts and universities. I think we have a question to ponder over time, which is how many community centers should the city ultimately own and operate? We have some. There are places where people want more. To what extent are we fully utilizing the facilities of school districts and universities to serve kids, not just college kids in your case, but kids of a wide spectrum of ages, and what unused capacity is there. So you're sort of a model in that sense too. What you're envisioning for Fabian is not just a laboratory school for teaching teachers. It's also a community center, at least in some versions of what those words mean. And I think it's just, it's an interesting question, but it's also an important question. It's a big financial question on both the operating side for the Parks Bureau and all their partners, and for the number of kids we're not yet serving very well in the city with recreation opportunities. So something for us to ponder in this budget, yes, in terms of what we might do in terms of enhancing those recreation opportunities ourselves and with partners, but there's also a facilities question there. How many schools are there going to be that are like this one? How many partnerships are there going to be that get outside of the traditional boundaries that as you're doing here? I think that has the potential to pay a lot of dividends to people in terms of what's available to them in their neighborhoods, particularly if we're not able to build, and we're not, a community center within easy walking distance of every kid. So not so much a question, but a set of issues for us to ponder. But any thoughts about that? I know Commissioner Fritz and I have been talking about this, and we all think about it. And at a time when we're trying to invest more on both the program side and on facilities, it's something that we want to spend more time in conversation with you about, and other leaders of various educational institutions in the city.
We'd love to have the conversation. 53% of the time on our soccer and baseball field is devoted to the community.
Right.
And the new Fabian Concordia facility will actually have a gym that's large enough for our NCAA Division II basketball teams to be able to practice. And the idea was that we'd be able to demonstrate sort of college kids in action, as we already do with 200 to 300 of our students at Fabian every year. And you mentioned the idea of it as a lab school. We think of it as a collaboration where we're really learning from each other. In fact, the principal's office and the dean's office will be right next to each other, and a lot of our faculty will be embedded right next to the grade school classrooms. But Mayor and Commissioners, as you think about recreation centers, this is a conversation that and I'm speaking on behalf of our president now, Chuck Schlempert, that we would love to have with you, because we want to develop a new fitness center and a new arena. In fact, we had a master planning session with the campus yesterday, and I've shared with a number of individuals. The only way that's going to happen on the Concordia campus, and I'm speaking again on behalf of the president, is going to be community-based. And we'd love to have that conversation. We'd love to see, we think of this almost as one campus, the Concordia Fabian Concordia campus. We'd love to see this part of Northeast Portland be as rich, open, and accessible as possible to the entire community. It supports our mission, preparing leaders to go out and change the world, and it just makes great economic sense in terms of the economic multiplier.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 349, please.
Request of Trish Reed to address council regarding houseless issues.
Ms. Reed, are you here? Okay, then let's move on to the next one then, please.
350, request of Catherine Smith to address council regarding Portland and Tigard Police.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Catherine Smith. Dear Mayor Hales and City Commissioners, I have to return here again to testify because those Tigard cops, who I've mentioned before, are still shooting me 20 to 24 hours a day remotely with microwave weapons, ultrasound weapons, voice-to-skull command weapons, lead-in-machine sleep deprivation, etc. And they say they're still shooting my son with these when he's sleeping to give him cancer. Mayor Hales, you are the police commissioner with authority to make Portland police do their legal duty to protect people. Could you tell me, why haven't you talked to them about this issue as they torture and mutilate me daily with these weapons?
We have talked to them. Keep going, Catherine.
Okay. They have hundreds of other targets in Portland, including kids. Many people they use voice-to-skull weapons on to make them commit suicide, or they incriminate them because voice-to-skull weapons are mind control weapons. Cops have legally had them since 1994. Sergeant McCormick, previous Police Chief Reese, and it appears Commander Day and others cover up for these assaults and attempted murder, doing nothing to stop them. Mayor Hales, I know that you are smart enough to do all the tasks you have to do to be the mayor of Portland, and I think you are smart enough to listen to and look at the evidence and to know that these assaults are happening. You can and should talk again, since you said you already did, to those Portland cops and Larry O'Day, the new police chief, about this. Sergeant McCormick is taking, or you could say stealing, some or all of my reports addressed to Police Chief Larry O'Day, thereby doing a facilitation of murder to me and my son. Remember the motive of the cover-up I told you all before. Many of the cops don't want the public to know they have these kinds of weapons, so they don't want court cases about them. Many of them threaten, slander, intimidate, and do false arrests on us, so we will shut up about this. And that sure doesn't sound like they're complying with the Department of Justice by improving their training, policies, and actions to not do excessive force to people, or to not allow other cops to do that to us in Portland. Internal Police Review, that's IPR, has no authority to order Portland Police to protect us. Project Respond has no authority to make Portland Police protect us. Tigard Police Department is very corrupt, and many of their cops told me if I ever go there again to report them, they'll kill me. Your office assistant keeps repeating the same useless advice she got from another employee there, telling me to report those assaults to Tigard Police. And finally, Mayor Hales, when you don't do anything that resolves this, it makes you look negligent. Thank you.
You take care. Stop up at my office and talk to Cindy, and she will get you some help, okay?
Okay, but do you know the last time I went up there, she said your office can't do anything to help?
Well, she'll try, okay? So go on up and
Oh.
see if we
Catherine,
can
is
get you
this your
some
current
help.
address, the Tigard address?
That Tigard address is my mailing address.
Okay.
Is that where you live?
No, where I live right now is a Fairfield, but those, they burn me there every night. I'm not going to be staying there. I'll be going back to Safes any day now.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Okay, now, before we get into the formal council calendar, we have a proclamation about a city that loves trees. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor Hales. Is anybody here for the Arbor Day presentation? Don't think so. So I'm going to just read it. Whereas April 10th, 1872 was declared the first Arbor Day in the United States, and whereas Arbor Day is celebrated in all 50 states and around the world, with an estimated total of more than 18 million trees planted on that one day. And whereas J. Sterling Morton, the founder of Arbor Day, believed that other holidays repose on the past, Arbor Day proposes for the future. And whereas this day's theme in Portland in 2015, Trees Are for Everyone, invites everyone in the city to get to know and enjoy the urban forest, and to expand that forest to include all of the city and its residents. And whereas for the 38th consecutive year, Portland will be recognized by the National Arbor Day Foundation with a Tree City USA Award. And whereas, thank you, whereas the Portland Farmers Market has been bringing the best of the country to the heart of the city since 1992, and is hosting the Arbor Day Festival at the PSU South Park Blocks Farmers Market this April 11th. And whereas the community, volunteers, staff, and partner organizations work year-round to preserve and enhance the urban forest for everyone in the city, that everyone may benefit from our 240,000 street trees, 1.1 million park trees, and countless private trees. Now protected by the tree code, I might add now. Now, therefore, Charlie Hales, the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, the city of Roses, does hereby proclaim April 11th, 2015 to be Arbor Day in Portland, and encourages all citizens to observe this day.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hear it for Arbor Day.
Mayor, can I,
Please.
since we're celebrating trees, can we also just take a moment to celebrate Amanda's leadership? And I understand that the Friends of Trees will be presenting her with one of their highest awards on, I believe it's May 14th.
I think that's right.
And
14th or 15th.
congratulations, Amanda.
Yes, you're here. Okay, let's take care of our consent calendar, and then we'll move to the regular calendar. I believe there's a request to take one item off the consent calendar, which is number 361. Anything else? Okay, then a roll call, please, on the balance of the consent calendar.
Fish,
Aye?
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
So I will just note that amongst the consent agenda item is some refinancing of urban renewal bonds, which saves the city a boatload of money. I don't have the exact number, but it's interesting that we get harangued for some of the borrowing and spending that we do, and that we need to celebrate also when our city debt manager, Jonas Beery, and others do good work that saves the taxpayers' money. Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, now we'll move to the regular calendar. I want to welcome everyone here who's here to speak on council calendar items. If you're here to do that, when you sign up with our council clerk, we'll call you. If you are here to testify, please state your name for the record. You don't need to give us your address. If you're a lobbyist, please do disclose that information at the start of your testimony. If you're here representing an organization, please disclose that as well. We typically allow 3 minutes to speak in front of the council, and we ask that you respect the time limit, and that we also respect each other in this chamber and allow people to have their say, even if we don't agree with it. If you agree, feel free to give them a wave or a thumbs up, but again, we'd like to ask people not to make vocal demonstrations in favor or against their fellow citizens' opinions in this room. Therefore, disruptive behavior is not tolerated, and if you do that, you'll be asked to leave. If you have handouts, please give them to the council clerk, and she'll distribute them to all of us. So again, welcome, and let's move to time certain item 351.
Accept the Portland Design Commission 2015 State of the City Design Report.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor Hales, and if I could invite those who are going to be presenting to come forward. It is a pleasure to introduce the Portland Design Commission's State of the City Design Report. So first, I want to thank the dedicated volunteers who serve on the commission. This commission meets a minimum of twice a month, and sometimes 3, often for many hours, as they review land use cases and provide design advice and indeed decisions. They are a dedicated, hardworking group. They are David Walk, the chair, Ben Kaiser, the vice chair, Guinevere Milius, previous chair, Jeff Simpson, David Keltner, and Tad Savinar. If anybody of those are here, could you please stand so we could recognize you or indicate that you're here?
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. And again, I'm going to stress these are volunteers. They give an enormous amount of their time for the citizens of Portland. The Commission is presenting their 4th report before Council. They have been operating in the City of Portland since about 1980, providing leadership and expertise on urban design and architecture, and maintaining and enhancing Portland's historical and architectural heritage. And this report obviously comes to Council at a very important time for all of us, as development and construction is exceeding the historic 2008 levels. Our neighborhoods deserve appropriate protection and predictability of quality infill that meets our density goals and inevitable growth. And I think we all are very proud of the way Portland is developing. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from the Commission members and from the public. I am very much committed to supporting the Commission in all of its efforts. Senior Planner Tim Herron will start us off, and then Commission Chair David Walk will take the helm.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. On behalf of Director Paul Scarlett, I have just a couple of brief points before I hand it over to the Chair and Vice Chair. The Design Commission, as you've acknowledged, Commissioner Fritz, provides leadership and expertise on urban design and architecture and maintaining and enhancing Portland's historic and architectural heritage. In 2014, the Design Commission did this 27 times. That's 27 different hearings. We've been very busy. We've seen as many as, on the report that you received, that many design advice requests, as many as 10 different briefings on different scale proposals, such as street seats or from the Oregon Convention Center Hotel. So this commission's looking at the small and the large in all of these hearings throughout the year. The commission also meets quarterly in retreat sessions with design and historic review staff. These are typically before a hearing, a couple hours lunch sessions, and where we review timeliness of our hearings. We review how to sharpen our message and delivery of concerns, and also consider best practices and how to communicate that out to the public so that these hearings can move smoothly, and we provide that heads-up customer service right on the front end. So last but not least, I just want to acknowledge Design Historic View staff. Thankfully, we've been able to hire more people, and all of them are most humbly sitting all the way in the back. So I would ask for those of you here, such as Kim Talent, Kara Fioravanti, Ben Nielsen, Grace Jeffries, Pooja Bhutani, Art Graves, Hillary Adam, Chris Caruso, and Stacy Monroe to stand up, please. And with that, I will step away.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time and dedicating a bit of time today to hear the State of Design report, Portland Design Commission, April 8th, 2015. I'm David Warwick, Chair of the Commission. Joining me today is Ben Kaiser, Vice Chair. And we thought we'd maybe change it up this year a little bit and have more of a graphic and pictorial presentation that touches on the who, where, why, when, how, and what of Design Commission. And we've touched on design commissioners, and this is the who, a little bit. I just want to give you a little bit more background. Myself, I'm RAC's representative of the Regional Art and Cultural Council, and I'm a principal with Hindenburg Eddy Architects. Ben Kaiser is president of the Kaiser Group, a development company focusing on housing and office projects. David Keltner, our architecture appointee, is principal with THA Architecture. Gwen Milius is our design appointee, president of Parachute Strategies, a marketing and strategic planning firm. And of note, we're very grateful for Gwen to stay on commission. We are a little light-handed these days, and her continued service to the city and the applicants is much appreciated. Tad Savinar is an urban design appointee, the studio of Tad Savinar, who is an urban designer and artist and general man about town. And Jeff Simpson, public at large appointee. He's a landscape architect and principal with Simple Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning Firm. As I mentioned, we are a little shorthanded in these busy times. That combination has called for also additional meetings per month. We usually have 2 meetings that are supposed to last from 1:30 to 5:30. We're now having common monthly, or 3 meetings per month that last from 1:30 to 7:30. So that'll be an issue that we start to cover later in the presentation. The where of design review, this map of the city outlines basically where Design Commission's domain lies within the city. And that is in the blue areas on this map. Central City, Lloyd Center and Central East Side, and the Gateway. So you can see our domain is very limited within the city. The green represents historic landmark or historic districts. The more red-purple is a 2-track design review with type 2 or neighborhood design guidelines. The white, which is the bulk of the city, falls under the Title 33 Planning and Zoning Code. So you can see just how much influence or limited influence we have within the overall context of the city, which is also a subject that we'll touch on later. The why of Design Commission starts basically post-war, where typical of cities throughout America, 50s, 60s, 70s, the pattern of development was where buildings reduced the pedestrian to basically an endangered species, having to navigate an urban environment given over to the automobile. As these are all projects in Portland, by the way, which are applicable. And then in many cases, buildings totally ignored their context, sealing themselves off from the street and creating an anti-pedestrian environment for entire blocks at a time.
By the way, I was walking from Burnside to work this morning. I noticed that some of the biggest offenders are also some of our most historic hotels, and where some of the renovations, where there's literally a blank wall facing a main street.
Right,
It's very unfortunate.
Right. And the what happened after the war is just the sheer amount of development. And so these dead walls, all these projects then contributed to kind of lifeless intersections. And then What that brought was a group of farsighted Portlandians that joined together to create a design review process with the goal of producing a more livable urban environment. And I think it's one of the few lasting things of value that came out of the 80s. So with that, the how comes into play. But over the past 30 years, Design Commission has been the city's advocate for a new urban environment, a pedestrian-rich environment with open storefronts and vibrant streetscapes, buildings of quality and permanence in a wide variety of architectural expressions. As you can see, this is kind of post-establishment of the Design Commission versus the kind of poster children of the pre-Design Commission. And the difference is obvious and influential. So with that, I wanted to kind of illustrate. So people often ask, so what do you really do in Design Commission? How do you impact the design process and the actual built work that is finally approved? So we've brought together three illustrations or three cases that kind of illustrate the point. This first case is a mixed-use project, 5 floors of housing over a single commercial floor, and it's a key site bounded by East Grand, East MLK, and East Burnside. At the first DAR, this was the rendering that was presented to Commission. Many of the issues centered around coherency, quality, and permanence. There were some parking issues. But the number one issue was that it really didn't respond to the character of the Arcade District, that distinct section of East Burnside that is just after the Burnside bridgehead up to 11th. So Design Commission encouraged the applicant to look at the arcade precedents and incorporate that concept into their design proposal. And so to their credit, they came back with a very detailed study of the Arcade District. We're all probably very familiar with this. And in their research, you can kind of see in the bottom left corner, there's the site that they're proposing to build their project actually had a very significant arcade structure. So with that,
When you use the term arcade district and arcade structure, what does it mean?
Well, in this case, along that stretch of East Burnside, there are about 8 projects that have a arcade that the building comes out to past the sidewalk and is over the sidewalk. And then there's a series of columns that creates a colonnade or an arcade under which people can, much like if you know this district, it's very distinct from any other kind of set of buildings in the city. And they actually, the background is kind of interesting because they were not originally built like this. This was a result of an expansion of the street, of the widening of Burnside. And so once they widened the actual lanes for traffic, the sidewalks then were incorporated below the buildings, thereby creating the arcade. So it's an outgrowth of transportation projects that created this distinct district. And so we felt that that district should be, and it is in the code, that it should kind of be continued. So it was great that we suggested this, the applicant embraced that idea, and so the result is this project that was approved, the Burnside elevation is on the left, so they repeated that entire arcade along the entire frontage of the project fronting Burnside, and a little more detailed shot of south-facing arcade where in our weather, there's a great cover for year-round activity, and the commercial storefronts that line the exterior elevation then spill out and activate the streetscape. So we thought this was a very successful project and felt very good about approving it at that point. The second project is the Burnside Fred Meyer that is near 20th Place on Burnside near the stadium. And at the first DAR, this is the rendering that was presented. Design Commission felt that it was very, very closed off from the street. Its character was more alien to the neighborhood, more suburban in nature versus an urban building, and there were also issues of quality and permanence. Design Commission's comments were centered around maximizing the transparency and thereby activating the Burnside elevation. Consider the pedestrian experience. The canopies in this case might be helpful. And then also look at the adjacent older buildings for materials and form, which were masonry in character for the most part. And after another DAR and some more input, a completely different type of building evolved from the process. One that is extremely, very urban and uniquely Portland, and it's a uniquely Portland Fred Meyer at this point. And so we went by and took a photograph of it. And I have to say, with the addition of these upper balconies that extend their eating and dining areas and meeting place, it's a really, really successful Fred Meyer at this point. We feel very, very good about approving this project. And then the final example is the Pearl Marriott. And sometimes there's a focus on buildings, sometimes there's a focus on site. And in this particular case, had a courtyard that was basically auto-filled, a drop-off at the center of the site, surrounding by the building. Design Commission feedback was the project basically had an urban skin and a suburban heart, and this was basically not acceptable as a non-starter. So the advice from the Design Commission at that point was to remove the cars from the center of the site and just make a great open space that all could enjoy. They came back with that advice in hand, revised their proposal to create an urban oasis, a really wonderful courtyard, and this is the final built courtyard and garden, which is an amenity for, and I actually have to say part of that, there's a public forecourt that was a part of this, this proposal. So it is actually a public park, public open space that then transitions back into a more private one. But we felt extremely good about this project and the impact that we had on this. To kind of reiterate just how busy it is and what's going on out there. There are 24 Type 3 cases we looked at. In the height of the 2007 building boom, there were about 22. So we're up from that. I would say we're in full development mode, full building mode, with 2060 ARs. Like Tim said, 7 briefings from staff and other entities, and then very rarely do we get these, but we did have two Type 2 appeals that we reviewed. And so I think the unique part about the development that's going on now is how much we're seeing cranes, on the east side these days. The east side has come of age, and we just wanted to share really quickly the impact of 12 projects that are have been approved and are under construction or are in the approval process. And those are centered around the Lloyd District and then the Convention Center Hotel, all the way down to the Buckman. And those 12 projects range from the upper left is the Convention Center Hotel, the upper right are improvements to Lloyd Center Mall, the lower left image is the Burnside Bridgehead Tower, and the lower right are the GOAT blocks, which is a 2-block mixed development. These projects range in scale from quarter block infill to the creation of completely new neighborhoods. As the 7 blocks, we've approved the first phase of Lloyd blocks, which is 3 entire city blocks. The second phase is underway with the complete 4 blocks. So 7 blocks of new development, and the numbers are impressive, if not staggering at this point, where this represents over 4.5 million square feet of space, 196,000 square feet of retail, 3,300 living units and or hotel units, and 3,400 parking spaces. So what's interesting about this, there are more parking spaces than units, which is, we don't often see that. Of course, that's spread over 12 projects. But so with that, the Design Commission powers and duties include, this is kind of the continued of what? Recommend the establishment, amendment, or removal of design district, develop design guidelines, review major developments, review other land use requests, and provide advice on design matters. And we actually focused on the last, which is to provide design advice at this point. And these are all, or some of them are more, have had more attention up to date, and some are kind of new. And but the first one has been bandied about for several months, if not a year or two, to expand the de-overlay zone. The issue with this is, and it probably could be overcome with some smart thinking, but it's a dynamic system out there of development that has its highs and lows and fluctuations that is dependent on staff, which is somewhat limited, and then even more so on the Design Commission, which is a static number of 7 commissioners meeting on a limited basis on a limited basis every month. So those two are at odds with each other, a static system and a dynamic system. So the issue is how to resolve that. There are several ideas on the table. Nothing has reached any kind of level of consensus at this point. Second is reconsider the housing bonus. We're seeing a lot of projects that actually go after the housing bonus, and that results in increased height and density, which oftentimes overburdens a particular site. And so some of the thinking is, should that focus on a housing bonus actually shift to specific types of housing that are other than market rate? If there is a bonus, then how can it actually help the city in different ways to attain a wide variety of housing goals? Update the community design standards. These are woefully out of date, and I think everyone would agree, from the development community to city staff to design commissioners to neighborhood associations. So that is something that is worth discussing. And then a final one that we're really concerned about is, and want to talk about, is reconsider the housing as a ground floor active use. And the reason for that is we're seeing counter to what we're after, which is a ground floor active use relative to transparency and commercial businesses that actually invite people in, have a strong connection between sidewalk and their activities within, and they even spill out onto the sidewalk when weather allows, and this is an integral part of a healthy urban environment. And what our thought is, we're seeing within these red zones, which are commercial zones in Central City, that's not always happening. And the reason is there is an allowance for housing to be considered active ground floor use. And so the result of that are often projects that do the opposite of what our real goals are. And we're seeing more and more of this housing type that are located on the first floor in the midst of thriving commercial areas. And the result is anything but an active streetscape. This one is on Burnside. This project is on Hawthorne, very close to the Safeway and the activity of Hawthorne Commercial District. And this one is a newly completed project on MLK, which is anything, like we said, but what we want. And so the question is, why should we settle for this type of urban condition at the first floor of commercial streets and in our central city when this alternative is infinitely better and easily attained? And so with that, we have a couple of suggestions.
Before you move to the suggestion, let me, is there a particular zoning that's allowing where you're seeing these projects with only
It can happen
residential?
in any zone that allows commercial at this point. I believe that's correct. And with that, because housing is lumped in with this active ground floor use designation, then it can go anywhere. It can go in downtown, it can go in the Pearl District, as we've seen. And in some places, it's absolutely appropriate. Not every street in the Pearl needs to be a retail, commercially active street. And so we have approved many projects, feeling good about that. There are key sites along commercial corridors and in the central city, some that actually we've had a review of some that are coming forward that will occupy critical components, critical sites in the city with this type of development, which we do not feel it meets our goals, meets the city goals.
And the regulations don't currently allow the design commission to say, no, actually, you have to have commercial?
Right. Well, all we can do is influence the outside kind of elevation and how that meets the street, but the function within behind that elevation, that facade is not of our purview.
Thank you.
Right. And so with that, there are potentially a couple of actions, and I'm sure you could come up with others, but the three that we feel are on the table, you could wait until the spring or summer of 2016 to adopt the 2035 comprehensive plan. At the current rate of development, we feel that dozens of sites could be lost to this type of housing on the first floor, and so we're nervous about that. We know that the comprehensive plan needs to be methodical and comprehensive, obviously, but there is a component of this comprehensive plan that does warrant our attention. You could accelerate the schedule for completion and approval of the 2035 comprehensive plan, which we're not really sure how feasible that is. And then for something a bit more assertive, consider a moratorium on first floor housing in commercial zones and within the central city. Exceptions could be approved by staff and/or Design Commission where it warrants it. So with that, I'd like to open it up for additional discussion and questions.
Well, let me start because I really appreciate the presentation. This is always a really good, important opportunity for the council to check in with the commission and our great staff on this important work. And you're doing a huge volume of it right now. So some of my questions relate to how do we manage the volume. Others relate to the proposals that you've just made. I mean, it seems to me we've got some, as you know, we've got some very large planning projects underway, like updating the comp plan.
Right.
And some things take a lot of time. Updating our design standards will take some time.
Right.
There are other issues, sort of exigent issues that are coming out of this development boom, like demolition and this issue of housing as a ground floor use that are relatively discrete issues that, in my opinion, should not wait for that ponderous process to be completed. And apparently not your opinion either.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you raising this ground floor issue. That seems to me just impression here, the kind of thing we ought to be able to move quickly on rather than wait for the long, very expensive, very large legislative process that we're in right now to be completed. So I appreciate you being focused on that issue as well as raising some larger ones like expanding the D overlay or updating the design standards. Let me bear down on some issues of process, and that is we're hearing a lot of concerns about the volume of applications. Again, you pointed that out. You're dealing with a large number of applications. Takes a long time to get design advice, takes a long time to get a hearing scheduled. The hearings are long. Not only commission members are being heavily taxed in terms of their time commitment, but so are applicants and citizens who are there to testify. And looking at the data that we've been supplied, there are a lot of cases that have multiple hearings,
right,
both at the DAR stage and at the design review stage. So what are your thoughts about how can we improve or streamline that process? Should we clone the commission and have two panels instead of one, you know, a north and a south or something like that, in order to give you and other volunteers a break and a reasonable expectation of how much of your time goes into this? I don't think this development boom that we're in right now is a one-year affair. I don't think this is a quick little bubble. I think it's a trend that we're in for at least the next few years. So it's not like everything's going to ease up, you know, for next year. So it seems to me we ought to be considering some of these options about process. Again, what can we do with the process we have to maybe reduce the number of hearings? Should we have more than one panel? What else can we do? You know, I think one thing we've already done, by and large, is that we have a development community and a design community that understands the higher expectations, and a lot of the time comes to you with a pretty good proposal to start with, but the process is still working to raise the bar. In fact, the developer of that hotel that you used in your presentation is somebody who's been through that process dozens of times, and who nevertheless told me on the day that it opened that the design review process forced them to design a better project, and he really appreciated it.
Oh, great.
So, you know, he was...
Hopefully without busting the budget, you know.
Yeah, he was really grateful. And again, this is somebody who's been through the process,
Right.
you know, more than once, and who said, you know, they forced us to reconsider that turnaround, and this plaza is great, and people love it, and we're glad that that process worked the way it did. So you're adding a huge amount of value, but it also is taking a lot of time. So
Right.
anyway, a whole bunch of things to throw at you there.
Sure.
But what do you think we can do
Well,
about the process?
let me kind of break it down. What I heard was hearing time, case schedule, and D-zone expansion, perhaps. So the hearing time, well, we have made a positive, definite, huge move by getting a timer. So now we limit, so now presentations of kind of a typical project, single block, partial block, are kind of limited to 20 minutes. It was very obnoxious at first, but people have now been trained on you know, how to react to the green button, the yellow button, and the red button. For projects like the Lloyd blocks, which are basically 4 times the size of a normal project, we have worked with staff and the applicant to divide that into a set of DARs, so design advice reviews, that focus on one particular aspect of that 4-block project at a time. So the first DAR focused on kind of open space, site planning, urban design. The second DAR focused on more of, what was the second one? The third one was buildings, second one was the massing, and third one was more of the architecture. So with those 3 DARs, now the applicant feels pretty comfortable moving forward with that massive of a project. But it has had to be scheduled on its own particular date, separate from other cases. So the hearing times are really a balance of having applicants aware of their time limits now and being more succinct. And also, we've eliminated the overlap between staff presentation and applicant presentation. So that absolutely allows the applicant to have more time to get into the heart of their case. As far as case schedule and repeat DARs and repeat hearings, those sometimes are a product of, like I just mentioned, 3 DARs for a very large case. And some of it is has to do with a DAR coming in, like the 3 cases we showed previously today, of, you're really not close to being a project that's approvable. So you need to come back in your best interest and show us a project that is approvable, that does address some of those issues that we've outlined in the first case. So therefore, you might have 2 DARs. A recent case came, I think, with 3 DARs because it was in the Pearl District. They were asking for a height bonus relative to the housing. So there was a housing bonus, and there was not real clarity on why that was worthy. And then they did prove the case of why it was worthy in terms of public benefit. So they needed to come back and kind of prove their case to move forward in a comfortable manner with that the height bonus would be approved. So, and sometimes it's sometimes it's the developer or a major tenant that's reticent to maybe conform or try to fit into the Portland model, much like the Fred Meyer case. So sometimes it's just knocking heads and the kind of calcitrant or reluctance to, or it might be that it won't work otherwise for their pro forma, and we're sensitive to that. I would point out that there are 2 things here, that the city, with all of the previous projects in the 30-plus year history of the Design Commission, have formed a contract with the city. And their expectation is that people that go before the Design Commission now are expected to go through that same rigor, the same design guidelines are applied in the same way. And with that, I would also point out that I don't think in my 7.5 years on the commission have actually denied a project that wasn't on appeal. And so when we've been working with applicants, every one of those projects have been approved at some point. So we are not, Ben is a developer, I'm an architect, we're all involved in the development of our city as professionals. And that's one of the reasons we're on the commission, because we understand that process. And we're all involved in that process through Design Commission and through our own businesses. So it wouldn't make any sense for us to be anti-development or anti-growth for the city. We just want it to be in a way that is in alignment with the city's goals.
So what do you think about
Let me just add on that one for a second, Mayor, is that it's interesting because, and I can't believe I'm going to say this as a developer, but I think we all need to be more patient in the process. I mean, it takes a long time to build a great city, and I think that everybody's getting a little anxious about schedules and pace. And I think that for all of us to collectively slow down and have a project move through the process. I mean, these are enormous projects coming through. And I don't think there's anything wrong with an enormous project or even a smaller project when it's within the city's core, or within these design overlays, to go a little bit slower. So I think that it's the expectations of the development community that may be a little out of whack with what we're all trying to achieve as a city, which is a great city, and that takes time. So I think that may be where some of the friction is happening. So with the timer to speed things up, and with the expectation that things take a long time to do in this city, that's okay. So I think.
Well, I appreciate that sensibility. I mean, we keep these shades down, but maybe today we should have rolled them up, because all you have to do is look across the street at that god-awful brick stone wall that led to the creation of the Design Commission in the first place.
Right.
To remember that buildings last a long time, whether they're good ones or bad ones. And so I appreciate, particularly coming from you, Ben, that sensibility that we should take our time and get it right. So, but if we need to have, again, I think we'd lose something in having 2 review bodies instead of 1. I'm concerned about that. So I'd rather make it work with 1.
Yes, I agree, and we've even spoken about that. I agree with you, Mayor, that it would be, I think there may be divergent views if there's 2 bodies. I could see them separating and going, kind of deviating from the collective goal. But I think a larger pool from the same body, maybe, so that because we're now, as Commissioner Warwick said, we're short-staffed right now. So, but if we had a larger pool to pull from, I think we could accomplish the same board, same commission.
Overfill police officer and firefighter positions in order to maintain the workforce. Maybe we should overfill the Design Commission and the Historic Landmarks Commission for the same reason.
Yeah, and I think then we could have 4 hearings a month if need be, and be able to not overtax those of us.
You might need a more attractive compensation package.
Yeah, it's pretty lousy right now. Other questions, comments? Steve?
Yeah, I mean, on page 2, you say, we're supportive of more design oversight around the city, either through the expansion of design districts and/or considering some sort of threshold that would trigger discretionary design review anywhere in the city for projects of certain scale, et cetera. But before expanding this tool to apply in more situations, the city must first assess the current issues with the de-overlay zone. Understanding that you think that this is a second step, do you have some preliminary ideas as to where we might add design overlay, or what kind of criteria you might add that would trigger thresholds you might add to trigger discretionary design review?
Well, I believe in the comprehensive plan, there are some areas in southeast near OMSI that are being considered to be included in the de-overlay zone. I think maybe some either commercial corridors or commercial nodes that become centers. I know when we did the master plan approval of the interstate corridor, they're designated kind of nodes at Killingsworth Interstate and other intersections that would warrant additional design scrutiny because they actually were given more height and density. So whenever height and density match up with that benefit, then the carrot and the stick, so to speak, was, and that was one of the things that helped Design Commission be created, is there was benefit relative to the process that you would have to go through. So I think those 2 things could be considered in partnership.
And potentially also community-led efforts. I think if neighborhood associations knew of the benefits of having a design overlay, maybe they would even ask for it. And we've heard murmurings in the past of communities wanting a design overlay to kind of limit the design opportunities and the decisions at the street level. So I think if we, even as a city, educated as to what I think design review means for communities, I think there might be a path there as well.
And to augment that, I mean, obviously, the D zone can't be expanded to all the white zone that was in that map we showed. That would just be untenable. So the kind of other leg of the stool is for the community design standards to be updated. And as you said, Mayor, that does take time. But what we're seeing and hearing is the pressures of development on neighborhoods is becoming more and more intense. And neighborhoods are less and less satisfied with it in some ways. So how do we strike a balance between growth as a city and retaining the sense of neighborhood that we so embrace in our city?
I have a comment and a question. The comment is on the Marriott slide that you showed. I mean, bravo for the outcome in terms of that little plaza. I mean, it really is stunning. But I know there are people that either love or hate the canary yellow color scheme.
Sure.
And in light of the emphasis you placed earlier on context,
right?
What was the thinking of the Design Commission on the canary yellow color scheme, particularly in the context of the buildings that are around the Marriott?
Right. That's a very good question, because that was discussed at length. And I think what the Design Commission strives for is to not be too limiting, not to be a repressive regime, so to speak, in terms of creativity for design applicants. And colors can change over time, and so if the Marriott tired of yellow, they could go to bright orange or bright green at some point in the future. So,
dear God, let's not encourage that.
so colors are maybe more ephemeral, let's say, whereas brick and stone and things like that are more permanent, so.
Point. And the question is really, I'm going to address to Ben. So you've raised a concern about ground floor residential in a commercial district. And assuming developers are rational people, why would a developer put ground floor residential? What is it in either the financing of the project, the pro forma, or the return on investment that makes ground floor residential attractive? And to the extent that we were to prescribe you couldn't do that, does that have any unintended consequences on financing or long-term operations, including does it require a landlord, a developer to consider sort of long-term stewardship around the commercial space that's different than what they would normally do around residential?
Great question, Commissioner. First of all, developers aren't rational. And we've spoken a lot about this, and I think that one opportunity is, and we've spoken with a lot of applicants about this option, is to design and construct them so that they can be, in the future, adapted to accommodate commercial ground floor. In other words, have the ceilings a little bit higher and having ADA access. Because we all acknowledge that along strips where there's no adjoining commercial, we'd be hard pressed to demand that they have empty commercial for 5, 10 years. Who knows that window there? But if we have buildings that can accommodate the change in the future, we think that that's pretty palatable to both the Design Commission and the development world. So I think that would work well on many strips that we see.
In a project type that has been successful, there are very few of them. Streetcar Lofts is an example of this, where it's a live-work unit in its true sense, where it's a business that operates on the first level, and then there's a loft that is more the resident, where they sleep and live, and so you get the best of both worlds. So as a compromise, we would probably very much support that idea, where you could have housing and commercial space in one, and/or commercial space. So the issue with what we've seen with a lot of the proposals of housing on the first floor is they're not. It's not realistic to expect someone to tear out 10 units to create some commercial space with all the restrooms and kitchens and infrastructure, unless something really magnificent happened to the retail rates versus housing rates. So that's a unknown as to whether that would ever happen.
Well, I like your idea about adaptable space. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm reminded that, in some affordable housing development the city has funded, with the best of intentions, we've built in the commercial space on the ground floor, but it's been very slow to lease up. So at some point, it's a laudable goal, but someone is picking up the tab on underutilized space where perhaps we were somewhat ahead of the market, even though it was at the right location and the right concept. So I think that's the balancing part.
Well, I'm glad we're having this discussion now. Obviously, we need to continue it. We may need to, we will most likely change in the comp plan which pieces of ground in the city of Portland are zoned for housing strictly and for commercial or mixed use. And I think your point is we need to get that right. So don't zone for mixed use where we don't mean it. But where we do zone for mixed use, get it. And so we've got two jobs to do. One, sort of stop the bleeding in terms of underutilization of mixed use zones now, and then get real about, come on, it's not going to be reasonably feasible anytime soon to get ground floor retail there. So do we really mean it when we say this is CM or EXD?
One of the things, by the way, I don't understand your business, I guess, but one thing I've always wondered is if we were intentional and we created, say, condominium spaces in a lot of the ground floor commercial space, in some cases it's ahead of the market, in some cases it's in developing areas. My guess is that an enterprising financial person might look at that and say, I'm going to buy a package of these things and retain them because at some point they're going to become very attractive.
Plan for the future, yeah.
And you get them at a beaten down price. But as the neighborhood gets built out, these spaces become attractive. Think about Gray's Landing. Once upon a time, you would think, well, that commercial space on Gray's Landing in South Waterfront, maybe is slightly on the edge. Well, now it's in the thick of things.
Yep, getting developed.
Right, and that's the part about how the city grows and allowing for that to be active once it all fills in, right?
And beyond Commissioner Work's examples, I think, in my opinion, MLK is one of the most critical stretches. That has many projects coming along it with ground floor residential. And if you drive down from north of Fremont, you can see 4, 5, 6 examples where the streetscape is just being stalled. And that'll be for 50 years. And there's nothing we can, and particularly along MLK, where we've all been struggling to kind of reinvigorate that stretch and get it to be a commercial zone. There's many examples of residential on the ground floor with their Venetian blinds pulled permanently, and even to the extent of bushes right at the streetscape. So that's, I think, it is one of our probably most critical things to speak about in the coming months, is to how to resolve that going forward for the city.
Great.
Just one question. On the concept of requiring that the ground floor space be convertible to commercial later on, are you envisioning that at some point in the future we might say, okay, time's up, now you have to convert it to commercial and kick people out, or just the fact that it would be convertible would be enough?
Great question. I think that would be market-driven, actually, Commissioner. I think that as things fill in around it, and as Commissioner Work says, the rental rates match or exceed that of the residential above, I think it would be holding upon the development teams probably to take it on themselves, regardless of pressure. But I think the opportunity there would give, and it's kind of flexibility for any building going forward. It'd be a great thing to have for the city as it kind of inhales and exhales over the next decades, how to accommodate these commercial strips. So,
Well, thank you for a great presentation. This is always, it's not hard to get us started on this subject. As you can tell, we do need to take testimony, and then we have a bunch of people coming here for a day of service proclamation here shortly, so we'll move on into public testimony and look forward to continuing the discussion with you as volunteer leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
and
Thank
the
you
other
all.
commission members. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, let's take folks that are here to speak on this item. Carl?
Okay, I have 10 people signed up. The first 3, please come on up, are Melinda Graham, John Spencer, and Stephanie Becker.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Go ahead, Melinda.
I'm Melinda this morning. She had to leave early, so I'm Melinda.
Oh, all right. Melinda, you proceed. Melinda Tillett, or whoever you are.
We are here on behalf...
What's your name in the record, Patty?
Paddy Tillett, the Urban Design Panel.
Thank you.
The Urban Design Panel, many of you will remember the AIA Urban Design Committee, which advised the city staff on planning and urban design for many years. And we recognized it was much more valuable to the city if the design profession spoke with a combined voice. So now we've formed a panel between the American Institute of Architects, the American Planning Association, and the American Landscape Association local chapters. And all of the advice and letters and so forth we prepare are approved by the boards of those, so that we really do speak for the design professions. So we recognize many of the problems that David outlined with the design review process and the difficulties encountered. We met with the Design Commission last May to lay out our concerns and some proposals as to how we might improve things. And subsequently, we co-sponsored a City Club Friday Forum on that subject, followed up by a meeting at the Center for Architecture, which was attended by over 30 city staff, Design Commission members, and other professionals to further this understanding. And so we have arrived at a point today with a letter which I think we have submitted to you, which covers some of the key issues which my colleagues will cover.
My name is John Spencer. I'm a member of the Urban Design Panel representing the American Planning Association. And I think we're here to say and to support the design review process itself in the city. I mean, we're all professionals here. We believe in the design review process. I served on the Design Commission for 11 years myself. But we're also here, I think, to reinforce kind of restate some of the issues that you've already been talking about, and we have some ideas about how we can proceed as a community and and offer the assistance of the Urban Design Panel to help in that whole process. Some of the key issues you've already touched on, like the lengthening time it takes to get through the design review process. And a lot of that is due to just the sheer volume of work. There's a lot of pressure on the Design Commission. There's a lot of pressure on staff. And when these meetings go on for a long period of time, there's pressure on applicants and there's pressure on the public that has to sit there and wait for their time to testify. So there needs to be, I think, some work done on figuring out how to streamline that whole process. We think part of that could be perhaps some refinement about the clarity of there's the three kind of steps in an approval process. There's a step which is the pre-application conference, which is kind of getting the whole thing started. There's the design advice request process and kind of the level of detail that's needed there. And then there's the actual design review hearing. We think that there could be maybe more specificity or more elaboration on the expectations of what's happening at each one of those different processes. And we think that would improve things as well. We're concerned about the community design standards, as was discussed, both the need for them to be updated, but we hear a lot of cases where if developers are in a certain place where you've got the choice of community design standards and going through a type 2 process, the choice is community design standards because the bar is not as high. So there's a real need, I think, to address the community design standards that way. All of these issues kind of result in inconsistent quality of development. Two other final things. The idea of the expansion of design review is something we think is really important to discuss, and it's really the capacity of our system to handle it is the issue. And finally, we think it's probably a good time to review and perhaps update and revise not only the community design standards, but the design guidelines. They're 20 years old. The last time they were fundamentally reviewed was when I was on the commission. Probably need to be simplified and made more up to date. We think that that's another exercise that is very important.
Hope we can call on you as leaders to help with that. So.
We're offering our assistance.
Thank you.
I'm Stephanie Becker. I'm also on the Urban Design Panel, and I'm a member of the American Institute of Architects and former AIA president in Portland. So I'm going to be very succinct and reiterate a lot of the things John said and David stated earlier. We're very much in alignment with what the work that the Design Commission is already starting to do. They've been aware of these problems and they're on top of those, but we want to support that and we want to commend them for the work that they and the staff have done to date. Getting a timer is incredibly important. Keeping people on those limits and being able to help projects get through the process is critical. Our first recommendation is to rewrite the purpose and requirement of the design review. The Lloyd Blocks example that they gave was a wonderful model, but it's not very clear for applicants what the subject of each design review will be. So starting at the large scale, looking at the urban design scale, and refining as you go through the DAR process, and then really talking about the finer details of the design in the final design review and not going back to large scale issues like where entry, loading docks are and entry to buildings are is really critical to the way that we work. Our second recommendation is to hold the Bureau Design Commission applicants and the public to specific time limits, and you've talked about that, Mayor Hales, and the commissioners talked about that, so I think that's clear, and we applaud them for the efforts to date. Updating the design guidelines is something that we think is really crucial to the process and to increasing the efficiency of the reviews so that the applicants are clearly aware of what the guidelines are and that the guidelines are serving the city the way that they should. And then laying out the process for expanding design review. While this adds work to the Design Commission, it's clear that there are communities in the city that need to benefit from the work of the Design Commission.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your help. Okay, thank you. Next three, please.
Are Joe Walsh, Susan Stewart, and Dave Ott.
Come on up. Okay, Mr. Walsh, I think you're first.
My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. Just from a citizen's point of view, there's an elephant in the room that nobody has talked about, and that's the Portland building. What happened with that? Since we're talking about the design, it's going to cost this council, it is our understanding, $100 million to either fix it or tear it down. And you have to do one of the two soon, or it's going to fall down, or somebody's going to get killed on the 8th floor, or an elevator is going to go through the roof. If the design, and this report is a really good report, and it sounds like things are going really well, except I'm reminded of the Portland building. And I'm also reminded that we have a housing shortage in Portland, a terrible housing shortage in affordable housing and low-income housing. And I don't like the term affordable housing because it's a misnomer. So let's talk about low-income housing. So if you exclude housing from the lower levels of your construction, you're making a decision that it looks good and it kind of fits in with the environment, but those people that are waiting to get into housing, too bad. We want it to look nice. And that's my fear, that this city is on a path to look nice. It's not Portland. Portland doesn't look nice. Portland looks interesting, exciting, progressive. Doesn't look nice, neat. And I don't want that. And I get the feeling that this commission, just from a citizen's point of view, looking at it from a distance, that this is the way the process works. The developer comes in and says, this is what I want to do. The commission says, well, maybe you shouldn't paint that canary yellow because it wouldn't look so good. And the developer says, but we want to do it. And the commission says, okay. Because in the testimony, if I understood it, no request from the developers has ever been denied. That makes me very nervous when people are not denying anything. Thank you.
Welcome. Good morning. Go ahead. Whoever would like to go first. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Susan Stewart from Boma, Oregon. I represent over 43 million square feet of commercial office space. And my board has asked me to come talk to you, and it's going to be a little different than what you've heard this morning. In my perfect world, my board would be sitting here sharing concerns with you, but overwhelmingly, the concern is if they express concerns to the Design Commission, they may face retribution in the future. So I'm the lucky one who gets to come here and share a few of their concerns this morning. There were a lot of them. I pulled 6. You have it in front of you, but briefly, design review needs to only be if the design meets code. Apparently, there are 2 clauses, C2 and C5, that gives the commission broad judgment. The group feels that these should be removed from code. Oftentimes, commissioners push for higher design quality. It's not always practical, and it's certainly not financially feasible. Commission members should be more specific in their feedback, and I quote, "Just make it someplace I would want to go," end quote. Commissioners often ask for things not in their purview. One of them, in discussing art and projects, talks a lot about the cost and the comparison with the amount of art in public buildings. Entitlements, zoning, FAR, height, these need to be non-negotiable. developers need to know what to expect before they plan their project. And finally, this was discussed a lot. Some meetings have lasted over 8 hours. Seattle, their meetings are 1 to 2 hours, and overwhelmingly the group thought that if staff had more input, this would probably not be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Susan, I just ask you, these, I'm looking at your testimony, and these are not, most of your comments are not particularly radical. You're on behalf of your industry, you're raising concerns or statutory interpretation, which is within your purview. But you began by saying that some of your members felt there was a risk of retribution. Is there a history of that, or is that just
My
some abstract
understanding
concern?
from conversations is that there is a history of that, and they sent the messenger.
Okay, we won't shoot the messenger then.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Dave Oddie, AIA, and I apologize, I'm going to read this because this is too important to just wing it. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Portland chapter of the American Institute of Architects. Serving as their president for 2015, I'm honored to be representing our local membership of over 1,100 advocates for a better built world. Our job as architects is to design great spaces manifested through a delicate balance of context, program, budget, schedule, taste, and code. The code and its relationship to design review is what I would like to address today. Commissioner Fritz recently released a memo about design review and its relationship to the code. They got a lot of people talking. I won't go over the details of the memo here, but in essence, she urges a harder line be drawn between design review staff and applicants, mostly architects, applying for design review. Commissioner Fritz advocates for quality design, compatibility, and the preservation of natural and historic resources over the idea of density at all costs. We couldn't agree more. However, the issue is not design review when it comes to the perceived battle between compatibility and density, or the perceived battle between neighbors and applicants. It is the zoning code. We are concerned this memo creates confusion with what is allowed by right versus what is discretionary. Despite a clear distinction between the letter of the law and more subjective parts of the code, we take issue that Commissioner Fritz's apparent solution to better design is making it okay to say no. The end result of a public agency that's encouraged to say no is a dynamic that assumes few common goals between applicants and neighbors, and in effect encourages applicants to skip the discretionary design review process altogether in favor of the prescriptive part of our code, known as the community design standards. The standards result in predictability, they result in efficiency, and they result in clarity, but rarely, if ever, do they result in great design. More fundamentally, the standards do not reconcile the perceived disconnect between compatibility and density. Creative and discretionary design is precisely how we can provide compatible density. Rather than trying to draw a line between density and compatibility, the AIA urges you to promote great design and compatible density by providing more resources to design review so we can encourage a collaborative approach between applicants, staff, and the community. Specifically, more qualified staff are needed under Tim and Kara to provide the support needed for them to guide their heavy workload and ease their backlog in a meaningful way. They need more resources to get to yes with better design as the end result. We need our leaders to value great design. We need you to be ambassadors for a quality built environment, and we need you to want more than the lowest common denominator known as the community design standards. We need you to support architects as we raise the bar through a discretionary design review process to achieve compatible density. Finally, we need you to see Portland's architects the same way as you see other neighbors, as local experts who want nothing more than the best for our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you haven't already done so, could you provide us with a copy of that testimony? Not necessarily
Absolutely,
right
Mayor.
now, but sometime soon.
You bet.
Thank you.
Mr. Oddie, thanks for giving me the opportunity to clarify. My memo was about land divisions. It wasn't about design review. So I have since sent out another memo to clarify that. I do, however, agree that occasionally the answer can be no in discretionary reviews. So there is, as you've heard, the Design Commission always tries to get to yes, and sometimes that takes many iterations, and I appreciate the partnership of the AIA and the Urban Design Panel for helping to design projects that can get to yes. But I do think it's important that not, where you have a discretionary land use review, it's not an entitlement, and there should be an opportunity for a design commission or a city council to say, actually, no, this on balance doesn't meet the approval criteria. But thank you for letting me clarify that my memo was not about design review.
May I respond?
Please.
What I would like to urge you to consider is, as we move forward with 2035 and the comp plan and the community design standards, if those community design standards aren't brought up to a better level of where they need to be, that is going to be the default. And so when you create a culture of no, developers are going to go to the standards, and it's going to be a losing situation for all of us.
I totally agree, and let's be clear, I am not creating a culture of no.
Okay.
I'm just saying that the public interest is what's at stake in discretionary reviews.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Commissioner.
much. We appreciate your partnership with us on this
Thank
work. Thank you. Okay, next.
Are Lauren Waxman, Anoy Jansky, and Charles Johnson.
Good morning. Go ahead.
One more, Carl.
Yes.
Let's go with Mitch Nichols then.
No, you go.
Mr. Jansky, go ahead while Mr. Waxman's
Okay.
getting organized here.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mayor. I'm Andrew Jansky. I served on the Design Commission for 8 years. It was an enjoyable term of service. We started with the boom cycle and had 8-hour meetings, and I ended with the bus cycle where meetings were canceled. So I kind of experienced everything. And I was the member at large for a while, and I was looking out for the neighborhood interests. And from my experience, the Design Commission and review system typically works well, and projects come out better on the after they've gone through it. And the examples that you saw earlier were really excellent examples. How long it takes to get through the system? I was one of the ones on the commission when the Burnside Fred Meyers was first presented, and I remember people saying that it's a suburban design put on in the city. So, you know, it takes a long time to get through the system, but the project is a lot better. One pillar of our system is the neighborhood association and how it fits into all this. They're good intentions, and it's worked well in the past for the community to express their voice. But there's some recent examples where it's really not the case. You know, I just feel like neighborhood associations are small groups of people that are talking about things, and they can typically grow in size around an anti-cause, anti-density, anti-dogs, anti-parking, anti-bikes, anti-laughing kids. You pick it, and they're going to try and get together to block something. The best examples at Design Commission were when we told them to go back and work with the neighborhood association and try and come up with a solution. When they came back, the project was a lot better. But what I've seen lately is the polarization at some of the neighborhoods really starts really low, and then they get together and they form an opposition that sometimes doesn't work with the development team. And I think we've seen several examples recently that what I'm suggesting is that staff in these smaller forums encourage the neighborhood associations to be more accommodating, to actually work with the things that are coming down the pipeline instead of just opposing it. And the solutions will be better instead of just saying no at the lowest level. And it's usually a couple people that catalyze this opposition. And if we would have staff say, no, we need to be accommodating for other people's opinions, let's work this out from really like the grassroots level. So that's my point.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Just a comment. I agree. It seems to be a lot easier for people to coalesce against anything than for anything. But I do have to say that laughing children have posed a huge problem in the city in recent years, and I understand the opposition to them.
Yeah, we got to deal with that. Mr. Waxman, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Waxman. I was on the Design Commission from 2000 to 2008 for 8 years, and I've been a developer here in Portland with my own company, Waxman & Associates, for almost 25 years now. So Portland is a great place. And anyway, I'm going to talk about three things. A little bit about the recommendations that were in front of you, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues in the R25 zone, and I also want to talk about our comp plan and some of that, and just sort of boxcar into a few things that I heard here today. I liked the recommendations that were presented by the Design Commission today, although I just wanted to chime in that I'm not sure that ground floor residential citywide. I'm a little bit worried about that in the areas that are further outlying. I think you're going to have some dead commercial retail spaces. I think that hurts. So I think there needs to be a mechanism there for those to convert over time. I'm not sure what it is, but you've got a lot of people who I think can help us with that. The R25 zone, I live over near the Clinton neighborhood. We've heard a lot about demolitions. We've heard a lot about land divisions. But you know what I see going on in my neighborhood is a good thing. I walk a lot. The houses that I feel are disappearing are the kind of, it's like a wildfire. We're in a really hot business cycle, and what's getting cleared out in my neighborhood are the old and the sick and the weak. And when I walk through, do I love every home that I see coming in? I don't. Could the design be better? Yes. But what I see are families and young professionals with dogs and instead of drug houses. And so that's a big deal to me. I think we're getting better. But that leads to, you know, do we extend D into these neighborhoods? And I think we could, but I think we need to be really, really careful about that from a staffing point of view. And I think we should do it with much consideration, which sort of brings me to the comp plan. And I think Portland's best planning and what's really made Portland great over the years is our comprehensive planning. And I think that the design toolkit, as John Spencer was saying, it needs to be updated, not just the community design standards, but the design guidelines. But I think it should be taken on like the comp plan with seriousness and with the whole future in mind and really thinking about how we want to make it better, because they are a little bit outdated. So I think that's a much better way to look at our planning rather than looking at these demolitions, looking at some of these LUR decisions, looking at some of these developer fees. I think those aren't planning in a comprehensive way. I think our best planning is in a comprehensive way. And lastly, I would just like to say I appreciated Dave Audie's comments, the AIA president, and I would endorse those and add my, you know, same sentiments to those. I thought they were very good.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Mitch Nichols, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I'm the Inspection Services Manager for the city in BDS. And I'm here just to voice our support for the processes and the moving forward with the Design Commission's recommendations. As with every process in the city that involves development, there is a great deal of mindfulness when it comes to how the building code, how the design code, and how the zoning codes work together. Very complimentary of the DRAC committee for their work and the recommendations that they bring forward in this process to help with the development of our community, but at the same time being mindful of the concerns with interaction with the public and the pedestrians on the sidewalks and so forth. Very, very critical to get it right. I think a great deal of work and effort has gone into doing that here, and like you to know that we fully support the effort.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We're keeping you busy out there.
You definitely are.
Okay, anyone else that signed up?
I believe Linda Netikoven wanted to speak.
Linda? Is Linda still here? There she is. Good morning.
The last word.
Last word from Lads Edition.
Oxford Abernathy.
Okay, that too.
For the record, I'm Linda Netikoven. I wasn't planning to speak this morning, but I feel compelled. I agree with a lot of the suggestions that have been made, and I'm really appreciative of all the hard work that the Design Commission puts into its mission. I'm really here to plead with you to see if there isn't something we can do on an interim basis to improve perhaps the worst of the design guidelines and the design standards. I'm a person who tends to attack problems from the perspective of comprehensive, big picture, all the important people at the table. That's my way of doing things. But I also have been working on Division Street since 2000 and have watched the change. And we've had 300 and some new units go in within 2 years, and the pace continues. We hear from our BPS staff folks who are very supportive and very helpful that we're looking at 2017 before the comprehensive plan is adopted by the state and zoning kinds of changes can go into effect. And we are looking at 2019 if we do, at a minimum, some kind of comprehensive look at those design standards. our corridors will be gone. We'll have missed the opportunities to really make them the best that they can be. In some cases, we're going to be losing historic treasures because we don't have the transfer of development rights or the historic incentives at an optimum. We're losing our affordable housing. We're losing, Lauren's in my neighborhood. He's coming to us in a couple of weeks with a development. We'll be nice to him. We're losing affordable housing as we're tearing down, the weak and the sick and everything, in the wildfire. And we're not replacing it in kind, and we're not replacing more. I mean, we have, 36% of our population is, at a standard where they don't have enough income to support themselves in an adequate way. And it's going too fast, as someone else said. Somehow we need to be able to pause this a little bit, and we need to be able to be more thoughtful about some of what's being built. The depiction of a neighborhood response certainly is accurate in some instances and maybe in too many instances, but we're setting this up right now. We're polarizing things in a way we don't have this kind of grand narrative about the growth in our city that people can sign on to and say, oh, I see, we're taking our share of growth here, and we're doing it in a way that is compatible with the history of who we are and who we want to become. That isn't happening. People feel like things are being thrust on them. They have no good way to respond. At a minimum, we need to change the notification requirements. We could do that fairly quickly, as we did with the demolition code, so that there's more of an early conversation with the neighborhood before plans are finalized, and then a more final conversation when things are close to ready to go for permit. Chance to see things in scale, to understand how a building's going to fit on a street. There are some little things that we could tweak more quickly. And I'm just asking that we please find some things that we can do more immediately than, just for the long term, which, again, we want to do in a good way.
Linda, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You're the last speaker, so just if I want to take advantage of this opportunity. So I took a walk around my neighborhood recently, and I noticed we have I live in the Grant Park area, so a lot of bungalows, craftsman style. We got some modern houses that have come in. We have small houses, big houses. Used to be you could buy a house for $200. Now people are selling their bungalows for $400, and they're being just demolished and replaced with $800,000 homes. And we hear all the concerns in neighborhoods about the lack of affordable housing, about the impact on neighborhoods, on and on and on. How much do you think in this debate? How much would you value the question of the design and the context for these houses? My sense is that a lot of these big houses that are coming into areas that have a traditional stock of housing just look like they've been transplanted from a suburban development into an inner city neighborhood, and they're just in terms of size and scale and design, they look like alien creatures. How much of the anxiety in the neighborhoods you think would be addressed through the design component versus all the other underlying issues?
I think that varies very, very much from neighborhood to neighborhood. I mean, you think of the folks from Beaumont, Wilshire, where there's a lot of demolition within the context of the single-family housing. In a lot of the areas that are facing more, kind of corridor development, it's the impact on the neighbors, behind the new buildings going in, and also the look and feel of the buildings that are going in on the corridors. There's the challenge of somehow upping the design literacy across the community so that people have an option to say something besides no. And so in some neighborhoods, that would make a big difference. I work a lot with the Division Design Initiative, and we've been trying to create design guidelines for divisions so at least developers would have a sense of kind of what the values of the community are around design. We also submitted a proposal to the Meyer Trust trying to get some funding to create a design toolkit that a lot of other neighborhoods could use, and to try to pilot it with one of the DCL partners or a lower income neighborhood to see what we could do to help a neighborhood that doesn't have architects living down the block who can help at those conversations when you're doing development. That makes a big difference in a neighborhood. If you've got folks on your board who speak the language, I mean, how many people on the street know what an FAR is or understand the difference between mass and scale, and suddenly people are asked to respond to these changes that are happening, and they don't necessarily have the tools.
Didn't we, Commissioner Fritz, didn't the council do that years ago a little bit with the skinny house controversy? in Chino,
Yeah.
where there was an effort to create some design protocols or examples, and
That example, Commissioner Fish, that's a really long conversation. I would have to say that that was not a particularly successful project.
all right, so we don't want to avoid those mistakes of the past, but anyway, let's
But that was analogous in terms of the amount of discontent and frustration that was generated in the community, definitely.
What I remember,
Yes.
some of the conversations were, well, if these kinds of houses are coming into the area, can they at least be consistent with some of the design
Right.
values of the neighborhood so they fit in and were contextual? And all right, so
Yeah.
a longer conversation.
Yes.
Just, but coincidentally, Commissioner, that was part of what my memo to the staff on the land divisions was, is look at the context of the neighborhood when making a discretionary decision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Mayor, I move to accept the report.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call on accepting the report.
Fish?
Well, thank you for an excellent presentation and really a first-rate PowerPoint. And I will say, just my guess is every commissioner up here would say the same thing, that these before and after type pictures where you explain the values proposition and you show us what it looked like and then what happened through your intervention and the collaborative process is very helpful to better understand the value added proposition. So thank you. I really appreciated the thoughtful discussion today and the testimony. And since a lot of people are here today who serve as volunteers in this really important capacity, thank you for your service. We really appreciate it. Aye.
Novick?
I second what Commissioner Fish said. I really appreciated the specific examples of what you actually do, and I think that's very helpful to us and to the community, and appreciate your service and the staff and everybody who testified today. These are tough issues, and one point I think it's important to make is that everybody's concerned about government being, well, not everybody, but there's a lot of concern about government being too big. But if you expand the number of things that you want government to worry about, then government has to be bigger. So if we're going to talk about expanding the reach of design review or making it more fine-grained, then that means Commissioner Fritz is going to have more people. So I just thought it was important to make that point. Aye.
Fritz?
Well, good citizens truly are the riches of the city, and thank you to the Design Commission for the phenomenal amount of work that you do and the high quality of the results. And thank you for helping to make it a great city. Thank you to Tim Herron and the team of staff, and to Mitch Nichols for coming to show that actually BDS does have many different divisions, and we work really hard to work together and to make it work for the development community as well as for the neighbors. Thank you to my colleagues, and yes, we are going to be having quite a significant budget ask. Aye.
Hales?
Well, I want to thank all the current and former members of the Design Commission who are here today and representatives of the design community. We do have a high level of understanding in this city between the public sector, the private sector, and the nonprofit sector about what kind of city we want. And we constantly have to bring new citizens into that conversation. And I think some of the turmoil we're seeing in our neighborhood network really kind of reflects that. I want to first, thank you for the report. Second, pledge that we're going to move quickly on the recommendations that you've made, because I think they're very important. And then third, just want to deal with one of the points that got raised in discussion here and might be the subject of other opining around the city about this. I think it's important to remember, and these examples showed it, that good design is not a trade-off between an economically strong city and a pretty one. It's not like we only get to choose one. And the comments that I recited about the developer who said, thank you for pushing me to make my project better, really illustrate that. Earl Blumenauer is speaking next door to our manager's brown bag this week. Fred Miller has this series, and Earl's the speaker. And one of Earl's comments that I love quoting was about a woman named Elsa Coleman, who was our parking manager and who was responsible for implementing the draconian idea of limiting parking in the downtown core after the Environmental Protection Agency forced us to do that. And Earl said of Elsa something that kind of applies to the Design Commission. He said, never has one woman made more men rich over their objections. So never has one commission made one city better over at least some people's exceptions, because that's what you've done. I mean, that's what this does, is hopefully most people, as that developer did, see the point, see the value that's added by good design, because those buildings are going to be around for 100 years, and one that looks like that building is going to be worth a lot more in the 50th or the 100th year than the one across the street that's going to have to either be heavily remodeled or demolished someday to make way for a real urban building. So there's a real value proposition here, and I think it's important to state that. This is not a trade-off between an economically strong city and good design. They are one. And I think our commission understands that, our development and design community by and large understands that, and that's the ideal that we need to strive for. There's some things here we have to tune, and some of them quickly, in order to actually get what we're striving for. And I think you've got our attention, as this report always does, so thank you so much. Aye.
Mayor, I have an excused absence to go speak on behalf of the city. So.
Okay, I think we have some
Commissioner Fritz, I'm going to take this personally. This is our first major capital construction project with the Water Bureau, where we were looking forward to you of all people to get into the details.
Well, before we get into those details, I'd like to ask the council's indulgence to move to our National Service Day recognition proclamation, because we have some folks here to talk about that. So Water Bureau folks, sorry, if you don't mind, we're going to make you wait a little bit and take item 364.
364, proclaim April 7, 2015 to be National Service Recognition Day in Portland.
Well, we have some people here to speak about this and to celebrate the good work. Lynn Shemer-Velo is here, who works for Multnomah County Aging and Disability. We have Joe Shipley, who's an AmeriCorps member, and Abby Reinhardt from AmeriCorps Vista. Come on up, and thank you for coming today. And while they're getting settled, I'll read this proclamation, which says, whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character, and whereas the nation's cities are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet community needs, and whereas participants in AmeriCorps and Senior Corps address the most pressing challenges facing our cities and nation, from educating students for jobs of the 21st century and supporting veterans and military families to providing health services and helping communities recover from natural disasters, and whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 180 service locations in Portland, 180, bolstering civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations. And whereas more than 790 national service participants of all ages and backgrounds serve in Portland, improving the quality of life in our city. And whereas national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact, including more than $3 million in Portland. And whereas the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with mayors nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, City of Service, and mayors across the country to recognize the impact of service. Now, therefore, I, Charlie Hales, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, do hereby proclaim April 7th, 2015 to be National Service Recognition Day in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this day. So welcome, and thank you for your service. Who's on first? Lynn?
Sure. So my name is Lynn Shemer-Velo. I work for Multnomah County Aging, Disability, and Veteran Services. We coordinate one of the Senior Corps programs, the Foster Grandparent Program. And I wanted to recognize the great service that our foster grandparent volunteers provide in our communities at elementary schools, Head Start programs, after-school programs, and other youth-based programs. We have over 70 volunteers in the foster grandparent program. These are folks who are all age 55 plus and who are living on a modest income, about 200% federal poverty. And they have contributed over 50,000 hours every fiscal year, spending at least 15 hours a week, serving over 700 children in the capacity of mentorship and academic support. This is phenomenal. We have volunteers who've served in the program. Many of our volunteers have been in the program for more than 10 years. A few of them have been in the program for more than 20 years, and we just had one of our amazing foster grandparent volunteers who retired, serving 30 years as a foster grandparent. She focused her time primarily on spending time with children, teaching them to read and helping them to become better readers. So this is it's quite a contribution. This program mutually benefits all who are involved. We place volunteers in Head Start programs, preschool programs, the Boys and Girls Clubs, at the Providence Center for Medically Fragile Children. They're in Sun schools, they're in summer programs, and they're all focused on enriching the lives of children and increasing their academic success. Our volunteers provide much-needed support to classrooms. In some cases, they are the only dependable and consistent caring adult in the lives of the children that they serve. They have helped withdrawn children become confident. They have helped struggling children learn to read, find the joy in reading, and they work with kids who do not feel safe and help them to become excited about coming to school. Our volunteers also gain many benefits themselves from this experience. They not only receive a small stipend, but they have the joy of giving back to their community, and with the hope of expanding the potential for these children for the next generation. The volunteering extends their life expectancy, it decreases depression, they're engaged in their community, they are active in their community, and they are contributing significantly. And then, of course, there's the stipend, which helps these folks who are low income remain independent, and it empowers them to provide for themselves. National service builds community while making significant positive outcomes for all involved, and we appreciate your help and dedication to national service in Oregon and here in Portland.
Thank you. Zoe, would you like me next?
Thank you. My name is Zoe Shipley, and I'm a second-year AmeriCorps member serving with the SUN program at Clear Creek Middle School in Gresham. SUN, Schools Uniting Neighborhoods, is operated by Metropolitan Family Service, which is a nonprofit that focuses on community schools, transportation, family support, and older age support. MFS is unique in that it offers programs that provide support at every stage of life, serving a diverse community of people who often face cultural or economic barriers. The SUN program is an integral part of MFS and helps to further the goal of creating community schools that act as full-service neighborhood hubs where the school and partners from across the community come together to make sure that kids and families have what they need to be successful in school and in life. Most people associate SUN with the after-school programs, which is a huge aspect of what we do, but there's also so much more. AmeriCorps members serving with SUN plan school-wide events, lead adult classes, coordinate volunteers, run clothing closets and food pantries, and collaborate with local partners to connect families with invaluable resources. We provide students with a positive adult role models and a safe space for them to feel heard and valued. We help parents feel welcome at the school and provide much-needed services to families who are struggling just to get by. And SUN gives AmeriCorps members a space where we can try new things, explore our passions, sing songs and be silly, fail and learn and grow. When I started my service with the SUN program in 2013, I didn't really know much about AmeriCorps or about nonprofit work in general. I applied because I'd had a lot of experience being a camp counselor, and I thought it would be fun to try teaching in a school where I could spend a year with kids instead of just a week. At that time, I could not have predicted the impact that this service would have on my life. Watching my students grow over the last 2 years and learning about the challenges that they face at home and at school on a daily basis has really opened my eyes to the needs that exist in our community and in many other communities around the world. I'm so grateful that resources like SUN exist, and at the same time have learned how many resources are really lacking for families that live below or just above the poverty line. Support for these programs is essential if we want to create healthy, happy families and communities where people can thrive and succeed rather than just keeping their heads floating above water. In my 2 years with AmeriCorps, I've witnessed so much compassion and love, both from my co-members and from the students and families that we serve. I've been amazed at the ability of small, thoughtful actions to really have meaningful impacts in the lives of others. And I'm incredibly grateful for my time in this position, for the lessons I've learned, the skills I've gained, the friends that I've made, all of which will continue to serve me long after my service is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Abby.
Thank you. My name is Abby Reinhardt, and I'm an AmeriCorps Vista member working with the City of Portland's Main Street and Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative Network. I serve at the site at Historic Park Rose in Northeast Portland's Park Rose neighborhood. And first, I'll start off by bragging a little about our network of VISTA members who are working in the NPIs and Main Streets here in Portland. There is 6 of us in this network working as AmeriCorps VISTA members. Our job is to build the capacity of our organizations, help them sustain and keep working for the neighborhoods we serve. So for our first, we reported on our first 6 months of our service term, and together our group of 6 VISTA members in the Main Street and NPI network have recruited over 300 volunteers and leveraged a total of over $50,000 in-kind and cash donations to our organizations. So that's a pretty big deal for all of us. And I feel very lucky and fortunate to be working in the Park Rose neighborhood here. The VISTA experience has been very immersive, and I get to see people's faces and learn their names over a whole year. And really, I feel like I've adopted the causes and mission of improving the Park Rose Business District, making it a great neighborhood for the people who live there, and connecting everyone with the resources that are available to them. So I'm also very lucky that AmeriCorps VISTA is such a great fit in my personal career of public service and community work. So it's just, it all fits together very nicely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Well, by the way, delighted that you're out in Park Rose. Last year, the council put an extra $100,000 into supporting small businesses east of 82nd. And we've got an event coming up, and we'll probably see you there.
Yes, we will be there.
Celebrating the next chapter. So delighted you're involved in that work.
Thank you.
Well, I have such a strong personal bias on this issue, I ought to declare it, which is that my wife moved from Vermont to Yakima in order to be a VISTA volunteer. I probably never would have met her if it hadn't been for VISTA, so there's that. And then 2 of our sons were AmeriCorps volunteers working up in Alaska with Inuit kids, building trails and doing that kind of work, and the transformative effect on people's lives, but also on the volunteers themselves, is so profound, and I just so appreciate the work you do. So thank you. We'd love to take a photo with you and your colleagues in the council if we could. So if we could gather up here, all the great folks here on these multiple programs. Space over here, lady. Come on up. Come on up. Don't be shy. Hey, look at this. We even got a sign. All right. Cool. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Let's hear for volunteers.
Congratulations.
Oh, good. Oh, excellent. Good. That'll make her happy. Thank you. Good work. All right. We will move back to our, Nick, would you like to take the hold item first?
Please.
Okay, so let's take item 361.
Accept contracts with Advanced American Construction, Inc. and Black & Veatch Corporation for the design and construction of the Bull Run Dam 2 Towers Improvement Project as complete and authorize final payment.
Mr. Fish.
So, Mayor, this is a really big deal, and I'm actually, as I kidded Amanda when she was leaving, I'm sorry we don't have the full council. I'm a little chagrined that the council chambers is almost empty, and maybe we should take that as a compliment.
It's good news. That,
And the reason we've moved this from consent to the regular agenda is this is the first major capital construction project that's been completed since we changed the ground rules. And council's gonna get a quick report on how we did. And I'm hoping that based on the questions that my colleagues ask, that this iterative process begins to shape what kind of future reports you're gonna get and how they are presented. And so you're gonna obviously be interested in knowing, were we over budget, under budget, were we on time, those kinds of things. What's the benefit to our ratepayers, and on and on. But let me try just framing the issue for you. Today, we're in some ways pulling back the curtain on an aspect of Water Bureau work that very few people see, because the work has been occurring in the Bull Run watershed. But it's vitally important to both the quality of our water and compliance with some federal regulations. The specific matter before council today is we're coming before you to close out contracts with contractors on what's called the Bull Run Dam 2 Tower Project. Now, I have a confession. The first couple of times I was in meetings with Director Schaff, he talked about the Dam Tower Project. I said, David, I understand how passionate you are, but there's no cause for swearing in this room. Well, it turns out he was literally talking about the Dam 2 Power Project, and that is what it is. And I am pleased to report to my colleagues that the project has been completed on time and just slightly under the council-approved budget. To better understand what this particular Dam 2 Tower project does, I'd like you to think of it, as you watch the PowerPoint, as a straw, a fairly expensive straw that's been placed into the reservoir for the purpose of being able to capture the colder water that's below the surface. And why is that important? Well, our team is going to explain under some federal regulations and out of respect for natural habitat and other things, why we have to regulate water temperature. But it is literally a straw that's been placed into a part of the reservoir that goes down as far as 150 feet. So the work on this project was very challenging and also very dangerous. In fact, essentially deep sea diver type equipment going down where you could only work for a very limited period of time, and then you had to come up and recover. From an engineering standpoint, this is literally a one-of-a-kind project in the country. And I learned just recently that it involved the largest silt curtain ever made at over a half-mile long. Unfortunately, we can't recycle this curtain in any of our bathrooms, but it is the largest silt curtain ever done. And why a silt curtain? Well, because we had to make sure that there was no contamination of the surrounding water. I want to also just share a few fun facts before we introduce our panel. Between the two reservoirs in the Bull Run, we have about 19 billion gallons of water that's stored. And that's really phenomenal when, daily we read stories about the crisis in California, challenges across the country. We have 19 billion gallons in reserve, of which about 10 billion gallons is usable. And that's because if you go down below a certain level or you get to the edges, you create what Director Schaff loves to talk about, which is turbidity events, and that's not good in our work. So about 10 of the 19 billion is usable. The project that we've completed is a cornerstone of the Water Bureau's Habitat Conservation Plan, which is in turn part of the city's compliance with the Endangered Species Act. And here's something else to ponder about this incredible resource that we take for granted in the Bull Run. We're using about 85 million gallons a day. And over the course of a year, we're consuming between 33 and 35 billion gallons of water. Mm-hmm. All of it replenished thanks to natural phenomenon that occur up in the watershed. Rain and water percolating through the natural filter system and then ending up in the lake. On some days, because we have a limited capacity to retain water, we're literally sending hundreds of millions of gallons of water into the rivers and streams and back into the natural ecosystem. That's how plentiful it is. We have more than we need, but we'll continue to protect what we have. And I'd like to introduce Mike Sturr, who's our chief engineer, and Tim Collins, the senior engineer, to work us through what I think is a significant success story for the Bureau. Gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name's Mike Stewart. I'm the Chief Engineer of the Portland Water Bureau. And I have with me Tim Collins, who's a senior engineer, and he's the project manager for Dam 2 Towers. He was also the project manager for the Sandy River Crossing Tunnel Project and will be our project manager for the Willamette River Crossing.
Give them all the easy stuff.
That's what we do. Not only that, we've just tortured him through the city's Leadership Institute, and now we feel he's fully qualified to come and talk to council. We're very pleased to be able to come and talk to you about this project. I think it went very well. It's a great project. We had great contractors. We had a lot of help on this project from our procurement staff and from the city attorney's office. It's a CMGC contract, and I think an excellent use, excellent example of why we use CMGC contracts. So without further ado, I'll let Tim go ahead.
Welcome, Tim.
Good morning. My name is Tim Collins. I'm the, as well as being a senior engineer, I'm the program manager for the CIP projects that happen in the watershed. So I wanted to talk about the main participants in this project. We had Advanced American Construction, and they were the contractor, as Mike mentioned. We had Oregon Iron Works. They were the fabricator of the wet well. They are also the people who built the streetcar. They were, in fact, building the streetcar at the same time they were building our facility. Black & Veatch was our consultant, and there are many, many other people who are involved. This is basically a 6-year project, and I am quite honored to be here and to be able to talk to you guys about it. It's probably one of a lifetime career type of project, and I just wanted to say that there are many people who are involved that made this a reality. You mentioned it was part of the Habitat Conservation Plan. It's basically designed to reduce the temperature of the lower Bull Run River below the dams throughout the summer season. I could throw some numbers at you. That's not my purview, but it's basically designed to approach what would have been historical norms in the Bull Run before we built the dams. I love your straw analogy. It's the one that I use myself when I'm talking to people who don't know what this is. It's very applicable. This straw has 3 different holes in it, and they have little gates that each hole can pull the water out of. But before I wanted to give you a grounding of what these towers look like. Now, I hope all of you and everybody in here takes a chance to go out and see the dams and see the watershed. It's truly a gift we have, and we need to appreciate it. But they were built in the 60s, and what I want, unfortunately, I can't do the PowerPoint thing. I can't point, but the North Tower is the one that we worked on. It's by far the largest. And if you look down, you'll see the grading at the bottom of it here. That's where the water leaves the reservoir. There's a tunnel that goes through the dam, and then it goes into our headworks facility. So we're going to focus on those. That's where the straw attaches. So we're attaching this straw to this screened area, and then the front side of the straw has these gates on it. So I've kind of already talked about these. There are a couple of other things that we did. We did quite a few, some improvements at our headworks facility to better separate the water for fish from the water for people. That was a challenge that we had as requirements were coming through, that we had to feed water to town and feed water to the river through the same system of piping. It was creating challenges, so now they're completely separate, and we have a much easier to maintain system. So here's basically a schematic. If you look in the side view, the stuff on the left is the existing tower. It's round, and then you'll see that sloping roof. That's the top of those gates. And the straw is this sort of ribbed-looked trapezoidal structure. And if you look on the front view, you'll see 3 pairs of gates, 6 gates. Each of these gates are about 15 by 13 feet tall. So they would be, they would be covering this screen above my head. They're quite humongous. So that's basically the structure. It sits on the existing foundation of the tower. So you'll see on the picture that kind of low disc shaped thing. The wet well sits on top of the existing foundation of the tower. So the first thing we had to do was we had all this equipment, all this new stuff that we had to implement so that we could operate these gates. And the whole tower was open to the elements, so we had to create a new tower. Also, another significant thing was we had to upgrade the roof so we could put a crane on it, because we needed this crane so that we could manipulate the gates when they're not in normal service, but if they were to be maintained. So this building was built on the shore. We literally cut the top off of the tower. They had a huge, it was basically a diamond encrusted piece of wire. And they literally ran this diamond encrusted piece of wire and it cut the top off of the tower. It was quite amazing. So then they rebuilt the roof and we put this this new building on top of it. And then we went to the base of it is with Oregon Iron Works. These are massive pieces of steel. Each one of these webs is 1 inch thick. It's just an amazingly complicated and massive piece of steel, because basically the whole tower has to be supported on this base. And then the side pieces, these trapezoidal, they're 2 pieces. You can kind of see the openings where the gates would fit on them. And there's this guy standing in front of it, so they're quite massive. And then we had to get it to the site, which was a job all in its own. Out in rural Clackamas County, lots of bridges with low load limits and weight limits. The one thing that I forgot to mention is that the tower was built out of 9 different segments. So it's 120 feet tall, and each of these segments had to be broken up, and then it had to be bolted together. All of this happened underwater. So here we're putting the base into, we've got it out, sitting on a barge. This 9,300 pounds, I looked it up, it's about equivalent to 4 TriMet buses. So these things are not trivial to move around. They're quite heavy and massive. And then this is showing it down. They had to drop it in 120 feet of water. Very cold, getting really dark. It was like 37 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit down there, so it was quite cold. And then this is another one. They had to flip these things over. It was not trivial to move these things around, drop them into the water, and keep them without any sort of damage to them. And then we, as you mentioned, this was literally like deep sea diving. I mean, these guys are in some serious gear. They've got these video cameras. If you look at, this is what they had to wear. They could only be under the water for 30 minutes at the maximum depth. The guys are watching them. You can kind of see his hand with the wrenches. Everything had to be bolted together.
And by the way, my colleagues know that Commissioner Leonard was a very hands-on commissioner in charge. This is actually Randy Leonard.
Yeah, that's
Randy.
Randy
A lot of time keeping an eye on the work.
Exactly, there he is under the mask. So here's some pieces. It's finally coming out of the water here. You can see it underneath the beautiful clean water of the Bull Run. And this is the final product. We've got a nice product with some new access. You can see the front part of the gates that move the valves around. The big crane that I was talking about, you can see the change in the color of the concrete where they cut the top of the roof off. Before this, you had these rickety old stairs that were extremely unsafe. Now we have this very nice state-of-the-art safe facility that we're able to monitor the water temperature and manipulate it. I said there was some work on the downstream revisions. These are some other pieces of it. Once again, everything was quite large, 96 diameter outfall. This is where the water that we pump through the towers goes into the Bull Run River. There's quite a large pressure reducing valve, because at times we would have to dump a lot of water through depending on the flow regimen. I wanted to go through the construction costs. In 2009, we estimated that the construction was going to be $30 million. In 2012, we negotiated a guaranteed maximum price contract with AAC for $31.5 million. The final construction cost in 2015 turned out to be just under $30 million. And so that was an owner savings of about 5%, $1.6 million. The consulting fees were basically about $5 million. We were also able to negotiate what I felt to be very appropriate and aspirational goals for our MWESB participation was over 30% of the subcontracting fees. And the total project cost for the entire 6 years was just a shy under $40 million. We're not the only ones who think this is a great project. We've received 3 awards up to this point. Probably the first one is the most prestigious, I would say. They call it the Oscars of the construction industry. We won that, we got to go to Vegas, and well, it was, the award ceremony was in Vegas, and so we got that for infrastructure. We've also been honored by the Daily Journal of Commerce and the Engineering News Review Record as, first notch projects. So is there any other questions on that?
Wow, great project. The CMGC method obviously worked in this case.
It was really actually critical to this project. It's one of the tough things about these one-off projects. There's maybe 5 of these on the West Coast. There may be more nationwide, but there's not like an inventory of these things. And it's deep water diving. And I think the participation of our contractor in both the deep water diving, what you can assemble underneath the water, and also their knowledge of how to break this thing down so that we could get it up there. I mean, it'd be a pretty simple thing to build it out in the river here, but when you have to cart it up to the watershed on trucks and it's got to fit under all these little bridges with load limits, it was critical to have the contractor on board, and we got them on board at the 60% design, and they worked with us throughout the project.
One benchmark you didn't mention in your PowerPoint has to do with water quality standards and whether we had any violations. So in the course of managing this, getting the equipment up there, working in the water, working on the embankment, getting the equipment in, there's a myriad of opportunities here to get dinged. What was the outcome on that?
We didn't have any water quality violations. We did scare ourselves a couple of times. One of the things you do when you're working over potable water is you require, the biggest thing that happens on construction jobs is the hydraulic systems blow. One of the requirements for the hydraulics on all the equipment up there was that you use, I forgot what the term. Food grade oil. So if you do blow oil, it's really no problem, but it's still reportable. So we had no water quality violations. Our water quality group was dogging us the whole time. We put in a bunch of extra monitors between, you had 2 towers, one we were building on, the other one we were using, so we had an array of monitors between the 2 towers to make sure we didn't do anything bad, or that if something bad did happen, we were able to respond quickly. But good planning on all parts, and very successful.
I understand, Mike, this is sort of a one-off, but as you both look back over the last 6 years, share with us a lesson learned, something that you as a group learned about managing a complex project that will inform and help us do a better job on the next project.
I will say that the CMGC process was really critical for this. Not only what Mike just mentioned, but because Oregon Iron Works was involved early on. I mean, it's things that we just couldn't know that they did, like how do you get a hydraulic wrench into this location under 120 feet of water? Those things were just critical. How do you build it? How do you fabricate a piece that's the weight of 3 TriMet buses and move it around? These are things that you needed to know right off the bat. You didn't want to do low bid. You needed to know this stuff. So alternative procurement in general, I think, is key in these really complex and long-term projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've used it a lot in transportation here. We've used it for streetcar construction, light rail to the airport. Same kind of thing. Big, complicated project. Only a few contractors really know how to do it. Figure out all kinds of problems that you didn't know you had if you get them involved in the design process early. So yeah, I think
it creates a collaborative teamwork environment that you need to work through these problems versus the more conventional low bid that tends to be a more confrontational.
Is there an opportunity to recycle or somehow reuse the silk curtain?
Cut it up and sell pieces like the airport carpet.
I will say we worked very, very diligently, tried to recycle that silk curtain, and we were unsuccessful in getting somebody to come and use it.
So one-off. How about safety? It was a dangerous project. Were you able to keep safety pretty well in hand?
I don't think we had any safety issues, and I've actually done inspection diving, and one of the pluses of the diving community is it's really, really dangerous, and they really, really know it. And we require diving plans and so on. So I'd say it was a really, really safe project, and partly that's the nature of the people who do this. It's so dangerous that you cannot be flip about what you're doing.
One last thing, I remember a number of years ago, we had some concerns from people about, in the nature of a construction project like this, there was, the risk of some kind of invasive something or other getting into the water supply. Remember that?
Yes.
Zebra mussels or something, right?
Yeah, well, one of the requirements is we've got a lot of water quality requirements for people going up to the watershed. And we had a protocol we worked out with Eddie Campbell's folks from Resource Protection and our own water quality folks. And all this stuff had to be steam cleaned. The diving stuff had to be steam cleaned, properly disinfected, so that we didn't drop anything in there that we shouldn't be.
Great work. Other questions? Thank you both very much. Does anyone else want to speak on this item? Then we'll take a roll call.
So I have one last thing I want to tell you. You have two jobs this morning, is to accept our briefing and also to approve the final payment of $7.63. So we hope you approve that.
Okay, we don't want to short this contractor after they did a good job. All right, let's take a roll call on that, please.
Well, Mike and Tim, thanks for the presentation, and Tim, congratulations on doing the leadership program. I believe that's the same program that
I appreciated that.
Sonia Schmansky in my office has been going through. And thanks to the professionals at the Water Bureau for managing kind of a one-of-a-kind project that, again, Mayor, because of the location and the exotic nature of it, it's really not in the public consciousness. But we have an obligation to make sure we're just as diligent in meeting our goals of schedule and cost, even when they're out of sight, out of mind. And it turns out this one is vitally important. And so I want to thank our team, everyone who worked on this, all of our partners. We're not done with some big capital projects. Actually, we're done with this. We're basically done with the two new reservoirs that are now online, Kelly Butte and Powell Butte. But, and we're also about to cut the ribbon on the new facility at Interstate. So the next big one might be somewhere down the road, both in Washington Park and then also when we start tackling the resilience questions under the river and thinking about how do we do that underwater, similar kinds of challenges. We're very proud of the people that work in the Bureau and do the hard work, and I'm grateful for this report and for the fact that they hit their mark across the board. Well done. Aye.
Novick?
I really appreciate Commissioner Fish pulling this off consent so we get to hear about the project. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tim. And it's just great news to hear that we're able to complete this complex project under budget, winning all these awards. And as Commissioner Fish said, it's a shame that we don't have a full chamber. And this is a classic example of good news is no news. But I hope that we've got an unusually large audience on Channel 30 today.
Hales.
Well, this is a great piece of work, so you should be proud. I'm pleased about a couple things here. One, as somebody who used to work for an engineering firm, getting your project recognized by ENR and AGC like this, that's a big deal. And I particularly appreciate the fact that our professionals accompanied the rest of the team, sounds like, to the awards presentation. It's completely appropriate for our managers and our leaders to participate in that kind of event and to accept the professional recognition that they deserve when they do good work. So I want to be explicit about that. That's important. And I'm glad that that was celebrated by your peers as well as by us. And it is an amazing project. I haven't been up to the watershed in a few years. This may be the one more reason for me to go take another tour because it's been a while. But yeah, it's a place that serves everybody in Portland that most people don't know how amazing it is, both from a natural standpoint and from a engineering standpoint. And you've made it even more amazing. And finally, as somebody whose scuba dive qualifying dive to 100 feet was at the bottom of a really cold quarry, I can appreciate what those divers, I can appreciate just a little bit of what those divers had to go through to actually get this work done. And that's an admirable piece of work as well. So bravo, well done. Aye. Pay those folks that last $7. Okay, let's see, we have a few items remaining here this morning. We have 363.
Appoint Jonna Colon, Don Grotting, Dion Jordan, Karen Loper, and Zari Zantner to the Portland Parks and Recreation Bond Oversight Committee for terms starting July 1, 2015, and ending June 30, 2017, or June 30, 2018.
Don't believe we have anyone here to speak on this item. These great citizens are willing to do this work, and therefore we should take a roll call on their appointment.
Did you want
Or a motion to adopt the report,
So
please.
moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Fish?
It really is a great group, Mayor, and it reunites Zari Santner and Karen Loper, who were a dynamic team at the helm of Portland Parks and Rec. And I think each of us take great pride in nominating someone for this important position. And I'm sorry Amanda's not here, so that we could thank her again for successfully getting the underlying bond measure passed, so we could actually appoint people to oversee the spending of the money. Aye.
Novick?
Yes, I suspect that it might have been easier to recruit people to oversee the spending of money to do cool things than it is to recruit people to some of our other citizen volunteer oversight boards, but we appreciate their service nonetheless. Aye.
Hales?
Aye, very good group of people there. Dion Jordan, Karen Loper, Zari Santner, Don Grotting, and Jonath Colon, all of whom served our city in lots of great ways. Okay, 365.
Authorize the first sale of general obligation bonds for Portland Parks and Recreation repairs and improvements as approved by voters on November 4, 2014.
Second reading and roll call.
Fish?
Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. And 366.
Authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder for construction of the Hollywood Grant Park Sewer Rehabilitation Project, number E10384, for $9 million.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. Portland has about 2,500 miles of sewer pipes, and over 1/3 of them are more than 80 years old. So projects to replace or repair aging sewers are important for protecting water quality, public health, and the environment. The Bureau of Environmental Services is in the middle of a large-scale sewer repair program to repair more than 34 miles of sewers all around Portland by 2017. The Hollywood Grant Park Sewer Repair Project will repair or replace 36,000 feet of aging sewer pipes, and I'm pleased to introduce our team, and I'll first kick it over to Scott Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, Novick. My name is Scott Gibson. I'm a principal engineer at the Bureau of Environmental Services, and today I'm here with Jill Hutchinson. She's the project manager for this effort. She's a senior engineer associate at our bureau. We're here asking for authorization to approve, to advertise and award a contract in the range of $9 million for the Hollywood Grant Park Sewer Rehabilitation Project. As the Commissioner said, it's part of a large effort we have throughout the city, and Jill will get into some of the details. We're here to ask questions or answer questions.
Good morning. I'm Jill Hutchinson. As Scott mentioned, this project is part of BES's Phase 2 sewer rehabilitation, and so on this map you'll see our project areas outlined in purple with the Hollywood Grant Park project filled in green. The project is bounded, it's in Northeast Portland, and it's bounded between 33rd and 57th Avenues from Fremont south to Interstate 84. The intent of the project is to replace or rehabilitate highly deteriorated pipes. And as you can see, pipes in this area have large holes, missing pieces, broken pipe, and vermin creating nests in and around the pipes. By replacing or rehabilitating mains, service laterals, and manholes, this project will protect public health, property, and the environment, increase sewer system capacity and reliability, and reduce the risk of sewage releases to homes, businesses, and the streets.
By the way, I just have to interject. I know my colleagues generally don't like Washington monuments. They also don't like alarmist presentations. But I just want to certify, these are actual photographs.
These are photographs.
And it seems like every time we come before you, there's one with a friendly four-legged creature, but these are actually.
I recognize that guy. I've seen him.
These are not staged. These are the actual photographs.
These are real. They're from the project. So in order to determine which pipes should be included in the project, we conducted the robotic inspections that you saw in the previous slides of all of the sewers in the neighborhood, and then we coded the defects and used this information to calculate the likelihood of failure of each pipe. We then ran an algorithm to determine the consequences if a pipe should fail based on social, environmental, and constructability factors such as proximity to schools, hospitals, in major streets, and near other significant utilities. The total risk for a particular pipe was calculated by multiplying the consequence of failure with the likelihood of failure. We then performed an alternatives analysis to determine if we should invest in replacing the pipe now or wait to fix it in the future. And the outcome of this analysis is the assignment of a net benefit cost score for each individual pipe, and those pipes with an NBCR greater than 0 were included in the project. So this is a close-up map of the project site, project area with proposed construction methods including open trenching, pipe bursting, and cured-in-place pipe, which is a trenchless technology that minimizes impacts to nearby residents. The project scope includes 142 pipes, or almost 7 miles of pipes, ranging from 6 inches to 36 inches in diameter. 75% of the pipes are more than 100 years old. 3/4 are in residential streets, and 1/4 are in major streets. The work will occur near 5 schools, and the contract requires work in these areas to be done when school is not in session to minimize the impacts to the school areas. There are 13 sites where work will be conducted at night with noise variances, and 9 of those are for cured-in-place lining, which is the non-invasive trenchless technique. So that usually takes between 1 and 4 days. And there are 4 sites where there's open trench work in busy streets. So the public outreach for this project was extensive. Our public involvement staff at BES communicated both general project information and specific information about the night work to residents, businesses, neighborhood associations, business associations, schools, TriMet, and Providence facilities. So this is a flyer or a map that was included in one of the public involvement flyers that was sent to all area residents and businesses. And we also had a public meeting that was held on March 10th to address any questions and concerns from the neighborhood. One of the unique features of the Hollywood Grant Park project is that it will use vitrified clay pipe instead of PVC, which is BES's standard material for small diameter applications. The use of VCP is part of a 4-project pilot effort, which is a continuation of prior efforts and is the next step in our evaluation of appropriate pipe materials. At this point, we have not made a wholesale change in the materials we use. This is just a pilot. The pilot effort is being made in the light of the city's various sustainability policies, most notably the toxics reduction strategy and the healthy purchasing initiative. The toxics reduction strategy was adopted in 2006 with the support of Commissioner Saltzman, and it calls on city bureaus to seek products that do not contain, release, or produce polyvinyl chloride or PVC. It also identifies vinyl chloride, the core monomer input for PVC, as a priority chemical of concern. And finally, it calls for the use of third-party certified materials where appropriate, and clay pipe has been rated by the Sustainable Material Rating Technology, or SMART, a third-party certifier at the gold level.
And by the way, this slide is the one that really got my attention in the briefing, because it sort of feels like Back to the Future. We've so taken for granted using PVC plastics, and we think about some of the benefits, but it actually is a toxin, and we want to avoid using it. We're calling it a pilot, though, because there's some things we have to work out, and we have to make some sober assessment about cost and other factors. And then one of the things that the team shared with me is, you know, you've got these competing values that we're trying to bring to bear. But what if it turns out you have to ship this product from a long way away? Does that undercut some of the environmental benefits of not having it, say, you know, manufactured or accessible locally? So we're going to do this as a pilot. and ask some tough questions and then come back and share those results with the council.
Yes, thank you. Talking about just returning to the Healthy Purchasing Initiative, this is another of Commissioner Saltzman's initiatives that was passed in 2012, and it includes identifying products that are safer and less hazardous by requesting complete disclosure of a product's chemical ingredients and the human health or environmental hazards associated with those chemicals. And clay pipe manufacturers maintain current publicly available health product declaration forms, which are material disclosure forms on their products or their website. So, wrapping things up, summary of the budget and schedule. The engineer's estimate is $9 million with a high level of confidence, and we expect the contract duration to be 18 months. Advertising in early May now, and notice to proceed in September.
We're going to, Steve, we're going to kick this thing off with a coffee, open house coffee that you'll be invited to at in the neighborhood, just so, before we actually start the work, people have a chance to come in and get additional information. We'll be doing that also in Hawthorne. We spend a lot of outreach, but there'll still be people who show up and say, first I heard of it. So we want to be able to make sure that they get another bite at the apple. One question I wanted to ask Jill, this is an incredibly complicated project with all these moving pieces and things. And how many of these kinds of things have you quarterbacked?
How many projects like this?
Yeah, like this, of this scale, because this looks quite complicated.
I've been with the Bureau in the large scale, or the Phase 2 sewer rehab program for going on 5 years. So I think I've been involved in probably 9 projects.
Wow.
In the range of $3 to $10 million.
Very good.
A little bit more about Jill. We at a time in the bureaus, we had a rotational program where the engineers, when they first started out, worked at PBOT and Water and BES, and we used it as a recruiting tool. And Jill was one of the first participants in that, so
That's great.
she's been with us since and has experience at the other 2 bureaus as well.
That helps, yeah, that helps
And
a lot.
I certainly hope that no one at PBOT is trying to recruit you away, Jill, or at least you would give us fair notice if some kind of bad behavior like that occurred on my watch.
Where's the clay pipe made?
It's made in California.
Okay, well, not that far away.
There are 2 clay pipe manufacturers in California, Gladding McBean, which is in sort of north of Sacramento, and Mission Clay is in the LA area.
Just one question about that, because when we had our discussion, the thing that struck me was a plastic pipe just intuitively seems more flexible, and since it's going in an area where there's vibrations and things, maybe less likely to have a break or something than a clay. Is that true, or is the way the clay pipe manufactured make it just as resilient?
Well, for resiliency, we can look at in the soil properties where it's going to be installed, and we can look at permanent ground deflections and other movements that we might see. Those aren't an issue in this area, so we're not expecting the clay to have to move, or the pipe material, no matter what the material, to have to move. It's a matter of good bedding. Now, with PVC, it's longer links, so fewer joints. Clay has shorter links, and it can move through the joints. So there's allowable deflections in the joints.
During the design phase, we also did a review of the soils in the area and the potential for liquefaction and other things that would happen during an earthquake or another natural disaster, and we aren't at risk of those types of things in this area.
Good. Other questions? Great. Thank you very much. Good project. Let's take a roll call vote on.
Well, this
first reading.
I think
Oh, sorry, it's only first reading, so that will be
Nice job,
back
thank
with
you.
second reading next week. And the fact that we now have the BES Bureau digging up 2 members of the council's neighborhoods should not stop us from proceeding with the project, because they're
Well,
just
actually,
finishing
Mayor,
up.
it turns out they're not doing any work on my particular street, but that's good because I've already got my own sewer problems in my house. And we have to connect a pipe that failed, and it's like the fire following the flood. When we got to someone to come in to look at it, they said, well, we can't actually do the pipe until you remove all the asbestos. So
Wow.
now we have to remove everything in the basement of the house to remove the asbestos before we can start the pipe project. So I'm delighted that my street is not actually in the scope of work on this one. Although that wasn't my request, I was delighted to be saved of that as well.
Well, they dug up my street, but they did a fine job. Thank you very much.
Thank
That goes to second reading, and we will have to delay item 367 until this afternoon, and we're recessed till 2 o'clock.